Good evening, friend, and welcome. It is good to have you back here in the quiet with me. Settle your head into the pillow. Let your shoulders come down from wherever they have been holding all day. Your hands can rest now, open and easy, and your eyes may close whenever they would like to. Tonight we walk, slowly and very quietly, through a great Tudor palace after the court has gone to bed. Picture Hampton Court in the last years of the 1500s. As many as 1,000 people are asleep under one roof, and only a few small lanterns still move in the dark. Here is the question to carry down into sleep. Who stays awake in a house this size so that everyone else can rest? If this is the kind of quiet history you like to fall asleep to, a like or subscribing helps these long, calm nights reach the other people who need them. There is no need to do it now, only rest. And if you like, you can tell me later where in the world you're listening from and what the hour is there. Someone out on a dark road with the heater humming low, someone warm under a blanket with the lamp turned down. So dim your light, if it is not already low. Let the room go soft around you, and come with me now, back to a great palace on the river, in the last years of the 1500s, on one ordinary night in the dark. Let me set the scene for you, gently, before we step inside. Picture a great palace of warm red brick standing on the Thames, some miles upriver from the noise of London. The river moves past it slowly in the last of the light. The brick has been warmed all day by a low autumn sun, and now as the sun goes down it holds that warmth a little longer, the way a good wall does. Above the roofline stand rows of tall chimneys, each one twisted and moulded like sugarwork, dozens upon dozens of them. The last colour in the sky catches their tops, while the courts below have already gone into shadow. This is Hampton Court, in the last years of the 1500s. Tonight we are going to watch it go quietly to sleep. It is a very large place to fall quiet. A cardinal named Thomas Wolsey began it, early in the century, as the grandest house any subject in England had ever raised for himself. Then the king, Henry VIII, took it for the crown, and made it grander still, wing upon wing, court beyond court, until it was the largest and finest palace in the land. What we are looking at is not one house, but something closer to a small town, gathered behind a single long wall with the river for its road, and like a town it is full of people. When the whole court is here, as many as 1,000 souls sleep under these roofs. Think of that for a moment, warm in your own bed, 1,000 people in one place on one night. There are great lords and their ladies, and each of them has brought their own servants. There are officers and clerks, cooks and grooms, porters and watchmen, maids and laundresses and boys. Nearly all of them will sleep tonight inside these walls, most of them close to where they work, so that at the very centre of it all, one person, the sovereign, may lie down and rest in warmth and safety. 1,000 under one roof. Hold that number lightly as we walk. It is the first of our handholds tonight, and we will come back to it. Let me give you a person to walk beside, so you're not wandering these courts alone. Let us say there is a gentleman usher of the hall, a man of middle years, sober and kind, who has served in this house a long time. It is his work to see the great room settled for the night. He knows every door and every draught. He carries no lantern yet because there is still just enough light in the sky, but he has one ready, and he is the one who will walk us in. The palace is governed, he could tell you, by 2 great households under one roof, and it helps to know them before the dark comes down. Above stairs, in the staterooms and the royal lodgings, everything falls under the Lord Chamberlain, the officer of the sovereign's public and private rooms. Below stairs, in the kitchens and the cellars and the service offices, everything falls under the Lord Steward, the officer of food and fuel and the working world. Between the two of them they govern this whole moving machine, and tonight, as the light fails, both households begin the same slow work at once, the turning of a palace of display into a palace of rest. For now, the day is still ending. Across the base court, The wide first courtyard just inside the gate, the last business of the afternoon is winding down. Servants cross with covered dishes and folded linen. A groom leads a tired horse toward the stables. Somewhere a door closes on a warm room. The windows that face the courts are small panes of leaded glass, and one by one they begin to glow as candles are lit inside against the coming dark. From out here they look like squares of soft gold set into the brick, and there are so many of them that the whole great front of the palace seems slowly to be waking into light even as the sky goes dark. That is the strange, lovely thing about a great house at dusk. As the world outside dims, the house itself grows warm and bright. Our gentleman usher stands a moment in the court and looks up at all those lit windows. He has seen it 1,000 evenings, and it still holds him. Behind each of those small gold squares is a room, and in each room someone is making ready for the night. Someone banking a fire, someone warming a bed, someone setting out bread and ale and a candle, in case the night should want them. Above him, high over the inner gateway, there's a great clock, made in the reign of the old king, and it turns as it has turned for 50 years. It shows the hour and the day and the month, and the changing face of the moon, and even the time of high water down at London Bridge, so that a bargeman might know when to catch the tide. It is turning now, slowly, its painted sun and moon wheeling on into the evening, marking the palace over into night while nobody watches it do so. We will come back to that clock near the end when the night is at its deepest. For now, let it simply turn. And the palace is already turning in 100 quiet ways at once, though from the court you would hardly know it. Down in the kitchens, below the level of the ground, the great fires are being fed rather than let die, for their work is only half done, and the harder half is the night. In the cellars, the day's used vessels are washed and set to drain. In the chandlery, the little office that keeps the light, the candles for the evening have already gone out to every room by rank, and the counting of what will come back has already begun in someone's careful head. In the stables, the horses are settled and rubbed down, and the grooms are climbing to bed in the warm straw lofts above them. None of this is hurried. All of it is old habit. The same turning done every evening of the year, so that the whole great machine slides from day into night without a single jolt, the way a good ship comes slowly about. Our usher feels the change more than he sees it. A great house has a mood, and its evening mood is a kind of settling weight, 1,000 small easings all happening at once. He thinks, as he often does at this hour, of that number, 1,000 people. Not a crowd tonight, but a gathering of sleepers, each one soon to be warm somewhere under this one long roof, and each one kept through the dark, whether they know it or not, by someone still awake. He is one of the ones still awake. He has hours yet before his own rest, and he does not mind. It is his part of the keeping. The light is nearly gone. The usher lifts his eyes to the sky, judges the hour by long habit, and knows what comes next. In a great house the night does not simply fall. It is begun deliberately by an act, and that act happens at one place, the great gatehouse, where the whole of this 1,000-fold world must be closed and made safe against the dark. So let us go there first, to the gate, and to the man who keeps it. His lantern is the first to be lit tonight, and we will follow it in. Come with me across the court to the gatehouse, while there is still a little grey in the sky. The great gatehouse is the way in, and the way out, and so it is the most important doorway in the whole palace. It rises up in the same warm brick as everything else, tall and square, with turrets at its corners and the arms of the king carved above the arch. By day, the whole life of the house pours through it, carts and horses and messengers and tradesmen, lords arriving and servants running errands, a constant coming and going under the stone arch. But by night it becomes something else. By night it is the throat of the palace, the one place that must be watched, so that everything inside may be let alone. The man who keeps it is the porter. Let us say he is older, broad and slow-moving, with a heavy ring of keys at his belt that he has carried so long he knows each one by its weight in the dark. He has a small lodge built into the side of the gate passage, and it is one of the warmest small rooms in the whole palace tonight, for he keeps a low fire there through the night and never lets it die. There is a candle on his table, a tallow candle, the plain and honest kind that smells a little of the kitchen. There is a stool worn smooth by many porters before him, and there is the great door itself, just outside his lodge, waiting for its hour. He lights his lantern first of anyone. It is a horn lantern, a candle set inside a little case with panels of thin scraped horn instead of glass, so the flame cannot blow out and cannot easily start a fire. The horn makes the light soft and yellow and a touch cloudy, and it throws gentle moving shapes on the stone as he lifts it. This small light, more than any other, is the light of our whole night. It is the one that moves. All through the hours to come, a lantern like this one will go along the galleries and up the stairs and across the courts, one small carried flame in a very great dark, and each time you see it move, you may think of the porter here, the first to light his. He has a great deal to know, this man. He knows who is lodged in the house tonight and who has leave to be out. He knows which gentlemen are still expected back and which have already come in. He knows the sound of every gate and wicket in his charge, the particular groan of this hinge, the particular ring of that bolt. Keeping the gate of a royal palace is a serious trust, and it was written down as such. The porter was to know the comings and goings, to let in none who had no business, and above all to see the gates shut fast at the appointed hour and the keys carried safely away. His is the most literal keeping there is. He holds the line between the warm inside and everything else, for now, in this last hour before the gates are shut, he stands in the arch and watches the court. A few figures still cross it, hurrying a little now, for they know the hour is near. A servant comes in from the town with a covered basket. A young gentleman comes in on foot, a little out of breath, and gives the porter a nod, and the porter marks him in his mind, one more of the house safely home. The keys at his belt are heavy and cold, the lantern in his hand is warm and gold, and the sky above the court has gone at last from grey to a deep soft blue, the blue of true evening, with the first star showing over the chimneys. Let us stay a moment on those keys, warm as you are. There is one for the great gate, and one for each wicket and side door, and lesser ones besides, and the porter carries them all, and knows them all, and answers for them all. A key in this age was a heavy hand-forged thing, cut for one lock and no other, and to hold the keys of a house was to hold the house itself. Every night they are turned, and every night they are carried away to their keeping, and every morning they come back to open the world again. The porter has done this so many thousand times that his hands know the weight of each key in the dark, and he could sort them blind by feel alone. Keys of the gate. Hold that with me a while, the way we are holding the 1,000 under one roof. They are two of the plain small things this whole night turns upon, and he knows the people as well as he knows the iron. He knows who lodges in the house tonight and who has leave to be out past the shutting of the gate. He knows which young gentlemen are still abroad in the town and likely to come knocking, and which have long since come in and gone up to their beds. It is quiet, watchful work, and mostly it is the work of simply being there, hour upon hour, so that the gate is never for one moment unkept. A palace could hold 1,000 sleepers only because a handful of men like this one did not sleep. There is a stillness that comes to a man who keeps a door. All his work is waiting and watching. He is not busy, not now. He simply stands and lets the house come home around him and counts them in without seeming to count. It is a kind of care that looks like doing nothing at all, and it is one of the oldest kinds there is. To sit up by a door, with a low fire and a lit lantern, so that everyone behind you may sleep sound. You have known someone who did this in one form or another. Perhaps you have done it yourself. The last of the light is going now. Over in the far corner of the court a single window still stands open, and a voice calls softly to someone below, and then the casement is drawn shut and latched, and that gold square joins all the others. The court is empty. The evening is here. The porter looks up once more at the darkening sky, and then toward the great door, and he knows the hour has come, for this is the moment the whole night turns upon. In a moment the gates will be shut and barred and locked, and the keys taken away, and from then on this great house will be a closed and guarded world, sealed warm against the dark. Let us stay with him and watch it done. So here we are, at the hinge of the whole night. Stay close and keep your voice low. This is quietly one of the most important things that happens in the palace all day. At the appointed hour the porter sets down his lantern where its light falls on the great door, and he begins to close the palace for the night. The main gates are tall and made of heavy oak, studded and banded with iron, and they are not light things to move. He swings the first leaf slowly across, and it comes with a long, low groan of old timber and iron, a sound the whole gatehouse feels rather than hears. Then the second leaf to meet it, and then, where they close, the great bar. It is a long, heavy beam of oak, and he lifts it, with a grunt, and drops it into its iron brackets across the shut gates, so that no push from without could ever move them. The bar settles with a deep wooden knock that echoes once up the stone passage, and is gone. Then the lock. The porter takes the great key from his ring, the largest and coldest of them all, and fits it to the lock and turns it, and the bolt shoots home with a heavy iron clash. The sound of that lock turning is the sound of the night beginning. Somewhere above, unbidden, a dog in the court lifts its head at the noise and then lays it down again. The gates are shut. The house is sealed. But the porter's work is not finished, for the keys must now go where keys of a royal house always go at night. They do not stay with him. By the good order of the household, the keys of the palace gates were carried each night to a senior officer of the house, and kept by him until morning, and so a small procession forms, quiet and grave, in the dark passage of the gate. The porter, or a groom under him, takes up the lantern and the heavy keys, and walks them in through the sleeping courts, past the lit windows to the officer whose charge they are. It is a short walk and an old one, done every single night, and it means one plain thing. The way in and out of this whole great world is now accounted for, held in one trusted hand, and cannot be opened again until the morning by anyone acting alone. Think of how that feels if you can from the inside. Not shut in, kept. There is a great difference between the two, and a Tudor household knew it well. To be inside the barred gate of a strong house on a dark night was the safest a person of that age could be. The wall was thick, the gate was locked, the keys were kept, and a watch was set to walk the whole night through. Whatever the dark held beyond the wall, the cold, the road, the long empty fields, none of it could reach you here. You are on the warm side of the door, and a watch is being set, even as the gate is barred, all through the house. This is the other half of the securing and the gentler half. It is one thing to lock a door. It is another to have living, waking people walking the whole night through, and a great house had both. Out on the leads of the roof, high above the courts, a guard will pace under the moon. Along the galleries and through the great chambers, the watch will make its slow rounds, a lantern the one moving light. And by the sleeping doors of the lodgings, grooms will lie down across the thresholds they serve. The lock holds the wall, the watch holds the inside. Between the two of them, nothing in the dark need trouble a single sleeper. Feel the difference once more, because it is the whole comfort of this night. To be shut in a place against your will is a hard thing. To be kept in a warm place by people who care for nothing so much as your safe rest is one of the softest things there is. The Tudor household knew this in its bones. A strong house on a dark night, its gate barred and its watch set, was a kind of ark. The cold could not come in. The road could not come in. The long empty dark of the fields beyond could not come in. Only the warmth stayed, gathered and kept, and passed from hand to hand through the hours like a small flame carried carefully down a passage. Our gentleman usher, who has been waiting nearby, gives a small nod as the keys go by. It is the sign he has been waiting for. The gate is shut, and now the rest of the palace may settle in earnest. All across the great house, in the same hour, the turning inward has begun. Shutters are drawn and barred over the windows. Outer doors are made fast. The little wickets and side doors, the servants' ways in and out, are locked one by one. The palace draws itself in, like a person pulling a blanket up to the chin, and every act of drawing in makes the inside warmer, and the night more its own. And now that the gate is barred, listen to how the sound of the place changes. The daytime noise is gone, the carts and the calling and the ring of the forge. What is left is quieter and closer. The fall of the porter's own footsteps going back to his lodge, the settle and tick of the great timbers as the day's warmth leaves them, a last few voices low from a lit window, the wind finding the leaded glass and going on, and under it all so steady you stop hearing it, the river, moving past the walls in the dark as it has all day and will all night. The porter comes back to his warm lodge and sits, and takes up his watch in earnest. The fire is low and red. The lantern stands lit on the table. The gates are barred behind him, and the keys are gone to their keeping. There is nothing to do now but be awake, and let the house sleep and mind the hours. He settles his back against the wall, and folds his hands and begins the long, quiet business of keeping a gate through a night. We will leave him to it, warm in his lodge by the sealed door. For just inside that door, all across the base court, there are honoured guests still settling into their lodgings, with fires being lit and beds being warmed and the small comforts of the night being carried in. Let us go and see how a guest of this house is kept, on the far side of the barred gate. Let us cross back into the base court now that the gate behind us is shut, and see where the guests of the palace are lodged for the night. The base court is the great first courtyard, wide and square, ringed on every side by tall ranges of brick lodgings. When the court is in residence and the palace is full, these ranges are packed with people. Along them, room upon room, are the lodgings of the courtiers and the guests, the lords and ladies and gentlemen who have come to attend the sovereign, and who must all be housed. There were many fine guest lodgings in a palace of this kind, good sets of rooms kept for honoured visitors, and around and above them many more, smaller and plainer, for those of lesser rank. Tonight nearly every one of them has a light in its window. Let us look inside one, for they tell you so much about how this world worked. A good courtier's lodging was not one room but two. There was an outer chamber and an inner chamber, one within the other, and that plan repeats all the way up the ranks of the palace, greater and greater sets of rooms one inside the next, until you reach the sovereign at the very heart. Even here, in a guest's modest set, the pattern holds. The outer room is where the guest's own servant sleeps and waits and keeps the door. The inner room is where the guest lies. To reach the master you must pass the man. Nobody of any rank in this house sleeps behind an unwatched door. The walls of the inner chamber are hung with tapestry. This is the great comfort of a Tudor room, and worth dwelling on a moment, because it is so easy to miss. The tapestries were beautiful, whole woven pictures of gardens and hunts and old stories, in wool and sometimes silk and thread of gold. But they were also warm. Bare stone and plaster hold the cold and breathe it back into a room all night. A wall hung with heavy cloth is a wall wearing a coat. The tapestry keeps the chill of the stone from the air, softens every sound, and makes the room, in the low firelight, into a warm and living place instead of a cold stone box. When you see a great bare-hung chamber in your mind, hang the walls with cloth, and feel at once how the room grows kinder. There is a fire in the chamber, in a fireplace of carved stone, and a servant has laid it and lit it, and is feeding it now to a steady glow. There is a bed, a good bed, with a frame and curtains and a feather mattress and piled wool blankets. There is a close stool in a corner, a padded seat over a basin for the night, so that no one need go out into the cold, dark passages. There is a candle burning by the bed, a good tallow candle, its small flame steady in the still room. And there is the guest's own servant, moving quietly about the outer room, warming a nightshirt at the fire, setting a cup of wine within reach, doing the small last things. Our gentleman usher looks in, sees all is well and moves on. This is his rounds. From lodging to lodging he goes, or his grooms do, seeing that each honoured guest is fires lit and settled, that no chimney smokes wrong, that no one lacks their light or their drink or their warm bed. It is quiet, unglamorous, endless work, and it is the reason the guests may simply arrive and be warm and never once think about how. That is the whole art of a great house. The comfort is total, and the labour behind it is invisible, and the guest is meant to feel only the warmth and never see the hands. Stand in the doorway of that lit lodging a moment and take in the feeling of it. The barred gate at your back, the fire catching in the grate, the hung walls softening the room to gold, the good bed turned down, the servant moving softly in the outer room, beyond the small leaded window the dark court and the cold night. Inside, everything a body needs to be warm and safe until morning. This is what the whole vast machine of the palace exists to make, over and over, in room after room, all the way up to the greatest bed of all, a warm-kept place on a dark night, with someone awake nearby to tend it. Let us dwell a moment on the bed itself, for the bed is where all this warmth is aimed. It is a wooden frame, and across the frame is strung a lattice of stout rope, pulled tight, and on the ropes lie the mattresses. There may be more than one, a coarse under mattress of straw or flock, and over it a softer one stuffed with feathers, so the sleeper sinks into warmth and rises out of the cold hard frame. Over that go sheets of linen and wool blankets, and perhaps a coverlet lined or edged with fur, and round the whole bed hang curtains, heavy embroidered curtains on rails, which can be drawn all the way round to make a small warm room within the room, a still pocket of body warmth the night cannot reach. To draw your bed curtains on a cold night was to build yourself a soft dark cave and climb inside it. Many a person of this age slept better in such a bed than we do in ours, walled round with cloth against the dark, and the finer the bed, the nearer its owner slept to the sovereign, for that was the plain currency of the whole palace. Honour and warmth were the same thing here, measured out together. The great lord in his fine set of rooms, the honoured guest in his hung chamber, the groom on a truckle bed by a door, the boy on the warm kitchen floor, each lay according to his place, and each was kept. What runs all the way down that ladder is not the grandeur, it is the keeping. Everyone, high and low, is somewhere warm tonight, with someone awake to mind them. The guest will sleep well tonight. Everything is provided, and that word, provided, is the door to the next thing I want to show you, because in this house nothing was provided by accident. The food on the table, the wood on the fire, the very candle burning by the bed, all of it came down to each person by a fixed and ancient system, a daily allowance measured out by rank, from the greatest lord to the humblest groom. It even had a name. Let us go down, out of the guest lodgings and toward the warmth of the hall, and I will show you how a whole palace was fed and warmed and lit, and where the household itself sat down to its own supper tonight. Let us go down toward the hall now, following the smell of wood smoke and supper, and I will tell you about the bouge of court as we walk. It is a strange old phrase, bouge of court, and it simply meant your allowance, your daily keep, the food and drink and fuel and light that came to you each day because you held a place in the sovereign's house. To have bouge of court was to be fed and warmed and lit at the sovereign's charge, and it came to you by rank in fixed measure, so that everyone in this thousand-fold household knew exactly what was their due. A great lord drew a great allowance, loaves and wine and meat and wax lights and wood and coal enough for a whole train of followers. A humble groom drew a small one, his bread and his ale, his tallow candle, his place at the fire, but everyone drew something. That was the promise of the house. Serve here, and you will be kept. I find this one of the warmest facts of the whole palace once you sit with it. We think of a royal court as a place of display, and so it was. But underneath the display it was, every single day, an enormous act of provisioning, a machine for feeding and warming 1,000 people and never letting one of them go cold or hungry. The accounts of such houses go on for pages, careful columns of bread and ale and candles and logs, all being measured out to name after name. It is bookkeeping, yes, but read it kindly and it is something more. It is a whole society deciding in writing that everyone under this roof shall be kept. Come into the great hall while the household takes its supper. The court itself, the sovereign and the highest, dine earlier and more privately. This later, plainer supper in the hall is for the household proper, the officers and servants and grooms who keep the place running, and they take it by their own strict order. The great hall is the largest room in the palace, with a high roof of carved and arching timber lost in the dark far above the candlelight, and a floor strewn with fresh rushes that give off a faint green smell of the meadow when they are walked upon. Long trestle tables run down its length, and here the household sits to eat, each in the place their rank allows, nearer the high end or further down, and every one of them fed from the same great kitchens. Watch the light as they eat, because the light tells you everything. The hall is lit by tallow, the honest working light of the house, made of rendered fat, cheaper and yellower than the fine wax, so that it smokes a little and smells of the kitchen and now and then gutters and needs trimming. Great standing torches burn along the walls. But up above, in the sovereign's own rooms and the chapel and the high rooms of state, the light is of another kind, clean bright candles of white wax that hardly smoke at all. There is a ladder in the very light of the palace, white wax for the highest rooms and honest tallow for the working world, and we will come back to it later tonight, for it runs through the whole house, and there is a whole office whose only work is to keep it. For now, simply see it, warm and low, all down the long hall. The food is plain and good and plentiful. There is bread, the coarser brown household bread for these tables, the fine white manchet kept for the high. There is meat and pottage, a thick warm soup of vegetables and grain that was the true daily food of most people in every age of this history. There is ale and beer in good quantity, for water was little trusted and little drunk, and a working household ran on ale from morning to night. The sound of the hall at supper is low and easy, the clink of a cup, the tearing of bread, the murmur of many voices that you hear as a warm blur without ever catching a word. That blur of voices, near but not quite understood, is one of the kindest sounds there is to fall asleep beside. Let it wash over you now, the sound of a great household at its supper, warm and fed and safe behind the barred gate. Our gentleman usher takes his own place among the officers, and eats, and is glad of it, for it has been a long day and it is not near over for him. Around him the household eats and warms and eases. Somewhere down the hall a young groom laughs at something quietly and is hushed and grins. The fires along the walls are burning well, the rushes are soft underfoot. The tallow candles burn low and yellow, each one in its place, and above them all the great dark roof holds the warmth and the murmur and the light, the way it has for lifetimes. There is a custom in great houses that I love, and it belongs to this hour, and it tells you what kind of place this is. In the principal chambers through the night, there was set out what they called the all-night, or the livery of the night. It was an allowance of bread and ale or wine, with a candle to see by and fuel to mend the fire, left ready in the room so that anyone who woke in the small hours would find food and drink and light waiting, and need call no one and want for nothing. Think what that means. The household did not only feed you by day, it provisioned the very darkness, so that the night itself was never empty, never a time of going without. If you woke at the worst hour, cold and alone in your own head, there was bread at your hand and a light to kindle and a fire to wake. The house had thought of you, in advance, in the dark. There are few kinder ideas than that, and this house lived by it every night, so the household eats and warms, and the murmur runs low along the hall. The bouge of court has done its daily work once more. Every soul under this roof, from the lord in his lodging to the scullion who will sleep by the kitchen fire, has been fed today at the sovereign's charge, and will be fed again tomorrow, and knows it. That certainty is its own kind of warmth, as real as the fire. To be kept, and to know you will go on being kept, is a quiet ease very few people in that age enjoyed, and everyone in this house did. When supper is done, the household will rise, and the tables will be cleared and lifted away, and the hall will begin its own turning toward the night, its great fire raked down and covered, its rushes settling, its candles put out one by one. That great room, the beating heart of the day, must be let go quiet like all the rest. So let us follow the hall into its rest, and watch the greatest fire in the palace being banked for the night, which is where the truest work of our whole evening begins. Come with me into the great hall now that supper is over and the household is rising from the tables. By day this is the loudest, fullest room in the palace. At its 2 great meals the hall filled and emptied and filled again, feeding the household in 2 great sittings one after the other, so that hundreds upon hundreds passed through it twice a day in a great ordered tide of eating. Twice a day the whole house was fed here, from kitchens built for a court of some 1,200. Hold that in mind a moment, and then let the room empty of them, for that is what we are watching now. The tide has gone out. The trestle tables are being lifted from their frames and stood against the walls. The benches are being drawn back. The rushes on the floor, trodden all day, are being swept and settled. And the great room, made to feed hundreds at a time, is coming down slowly to hold only the few who tend it into the night. Look up, into the dark above the candlelight. The roof of the hall is a marvel, a high arching frame of carved oak, great curved timbers reaching up one above another into the shadows, so that the whole ceiling seems to hang there without support, lost in its own height. By day the light comes down through tall windows and fills it. By night the candles reach only a little way up, and the great roof stands in warm darkness overhead, felt more than seen, like the inside of a vast wooden ship turned over above you. It has stood so for lifetimes. It will stand so long after this night. That is a thought to rest against. The old strong timber holding the dark up over your head while you sleep. But the true heart of this room, tonight, is the fire, and I want you to watch it closely, because what happens to it now is the quiet centre of our whole evening. The great hall fire has burned all day, a broad bed of flame and glowing wood. Now a servant comes to tend it for the last time before the night. Let us say he is a hall groom, a steady man whose work this is, and he knows the fire the way a shepherd knows his flock. He does not put the fire out. That is the thing to understand. He banks it. It is a craft, and an old one, and once you have seen it, you will feel it every night of your life. He takes a rake, and gently draws the glowing embers together into a low mound at the heart of the hearth. Then he takes the soft grey ash from around the edges, the cool ash of the day's burning, and he covers the hot embers over with it, drawing the ash across them like a blanket until the red is hidden and only a faint warmth breathes up through the grey. And there the fire sleeps. Under its soft grey blanket the embers hold their heat, slow and low and alive all through the night. In the morning someone will rake back the ash and blow, and the fire will wake again from its own kept warmth, and there will be no need to start it new. That banked fire is the warm thing I want you to carry through this whole night with me. We will find it again and again in room after room, the hall fire under its ash, the bedchamber fire banked to a low safe glow, the kitchen fires that never quite let die. Everywhere in this sleeping palace, the same small careful act, done by 100 different hands. Cover the embers, keep the heat, trust the fire to hold till morning. It is the plainest picture of the whole night, something warm, tended, and kept alive in the dark by someone who cares to do it well. The hall groom stands a moment over his banked fire, checking it with a practised eye, the way you might check a sleeping child before you leave the room. A well-banked fire meant a warm morning, a carelessly banked one meant a cold hearth and a slow chilly start for the whole hall. So he does it carefully every night, this small unwatched thing, and no one thanks him for it, and the hall is warm at dawn because of him. He gathers his rake and takes up his lantern, and the light of it swings across the great empty room, up the standing tables, along the swept floor, and then he goes, and the hall is left to its banked fire, and its high dark roof, and its quiet. Let me fill the room out for you a little more, so you can feel it around you as you drift. The floor of the hall was strewn with rushes, cut from the riverside and spread fresh and swept and changed, and in the better parts woven into matting, and all day they were walked upon by hundreds of feet, and now at night they lie quiet, giving up their faint green meadow smell when the groom crosses them. The fire he has banked is fed with wood, sweet-burning and soft-scented, and sometimes with sea coal, so called because it came round the coast by ship, a fiercer and hotter fuel with a heavier smell. A great house burned an astonishing quantity of both, whole forests and shiploads across a year, to keep so many rooms from the cold, and in the hall, as the fire sinks under its ash, the last warmth spreads low and even across the emptied floor. Listen to the room let go of the day. There is the soft knock of the trestles being stacked, and the scrape of a bench, and a low word between two servants, and a dog somewhere in the shadows turning round 3 times and lying down with a sigh by the warm hearthstones. Then even those small sounds cease, and the great hall, which fed the whole household a few hours ago, stands empty and warm and dim, its high roof lost in the dark above, its fire sleeping under grey ash, waiting for morning. You do not need to hold on to any of this. If you drift here, the fire will keep burning low all the same, and the hall will still be warm at dawn, and someone will still come to wake it. Let that be enough. One small light leaves the hall and climbs the stair. Follow it up. For above the hall, at the head of the stair, is the first of the great chambers of state, and it has its own keepers, men whose whole night is the watch. Let us go up softly and meet them. Up the stair then, and into the great chamber at the top of it, the room they called the watching chamber. The name tells you its work. This was the great guard chamber, the first of the staterooms, the room you came into at the head of the hall stair before you could go any further in toward the sovereign, and it was where the watch was kept. By day it was a room of coming and going, of guards on duty and servants passing through, and petitioners waiting to be let further in. By night it became a room of sleeping soldiers and 1 or 2 who stayed awake, and it is one of the plainest, warmest pictures of the whole keeping of the palace. The men who watched here were yeomen, and chief among the guard of a royal house were the yeomen of the guard, the sovereign's own bodyguard. Let us dwell with one of them, for we will meet the corps again tonight, and it is good to know a face. Let us say he is a big plain man, a soldier, broad in the shoulder, in the livery of the guard. He has stood his duty in this chamber through the evening. Now, as the palace settles, he and his fellows make ready to keep the night here, and the way they do it is the thing to see. They do not go away to some far barrack to sleep. They bed down here, in the very room they guard. Pallets and mattresses are brought out, or benches drawn together, and the guards lie down across the watching chamber floor, between the sovereign's rooms beyond and the whole rest of the house below. Their sleeping bodies are themselves a kind of wall. To reach what lies further in, you would have to cross a floor full of the king's own soldiers. The room is tapestried like all the great rooms, its walls hung with woven cloth that softens the cold and the sound. There is a fire, banked now to a low glow, our warm anchor again, breathing its faint heat into the room. There are a few candles left burning low, and there is the smell of such a room at night. Wool and wood smoke and leather and men, a plain human warmth. One yeoman keeps awake while the others sleep, sitting near the banked fire with his back to the wall, his weapon by him, his eyes on the doors. He is not afraid. There is nothing to fear tonight behind the barred gate. He is simply keeping the watch, because the watch is always kept, whether there is danger or not, and that steadiness is the whole point of it. The house is safe because someone is always awake in this room, on the good nights and the bad alike. I find something very moving in that, and I hope you do too, drifting there in the warm. The guarding was not a thing that happened only when there was a threat. It happened every single night, exactly the same, danger or none. A well-kept house is one where nothing happens, over and over, because everything is watched. The nights when nothing happened were the yeoman's victory, though no one wrote them down. This is one of those nights. Nothing will happen. The watch will be kept, the hours will pass, the dawn will come, and that quiet nothing is the finest work the guard ever does. Let me tell you a little of who these men were, for they are a thread we will pick up again deeper in the night. The yeomen of the guard were the sovereign's own bodyguard, a corps of chosen soldiers, big steady men picked for their strength and their loyalty, dressed in the royal livery and set to keep the person of the sovereign day and night. Theirs was not only the work of the battlefield, much of their duty was close and domestic and quiet. The keeping of the private rooms, the watching of the halls and stairs, the guarding of the sleeping house from within. A great deal of what they did at night while the court slept, and did so faithfully whether or not there was ever anything to guard against. See the room as they settle it. The armour and the heavier arms are set aside, near to hand, but laid down for the night. The men speak low, a word or two, the small easy talk of soldiers who have shared many such watches, and then even that sinks away. One by one they lie down along the floor, wrapped in wool and their own coats, and their breathing slows and lengthens and joins into the sound of a room full of sleeping men, which is one of the oldest safe sounds there is. The single fire breathes its low red warmth over them. The one wakeful yeoman keeps his place by it, and the night settles onto the watching chamber like a hand laid gently on a shoulder. And think again, drifting there, of what their keeping really was. Most nights, nothing came. Most nights, the danger they guarded against never so much as stirred beyond the barred gate, and that was not failure but the whole success of the thing. A house kept so well that year upon year nothing happened. In it was a house doing exactly what the guard existed to make. The empty, uneventful hours were the yeoman's true work, and he gave them gladly night after night, so that the sleepers beyond his door might never once have cause to wake afraid. Our yeoman shifts a little, and feeds one small stick to the banked fire, just enough, and settles again. Let me hold you in this warm, guarded room a moment longer, for it is one of the plainest pictures of safety in the whole house. This is the threshold room, the great chamber where the household world below meets the private world above. Anyone who would go further in must first cross this floor, and by night this floor is full of the sovereign's own soldiers, asleep. There is a homely warmth to it that the grander rooms further in do not have. The men have soldiered together and watched together for years, and there is an ease among them even in sleep, the ease of people who trust the ones lying beside them. The banked fire holds its low glow. A single candle gutters near the wakeful yeoman, and the room smells of wool and wood smoke and leather and old stone, the plain, warm smell of a place where tired people are safe, rest against their steadiness a while, drifting there. These are not anxious men. They have kept this watch 1,000 times, and they will keep it 1,000 more, and the sameness of it is its whole strength. The same room, the same fire, the same quiet passing of the dark, the same safe dawn. Little changes here, and little is meant to, and in that changelessness is a deep kind of peace. You may lean your whole weight on it, the way the sleeping guards lean theirs on the one who keeps awake. The first and highest rooms of state are held all night by these plain strong men on the floor of the chamber they guard, and nothing troubles the sleep beyond them, and nothing will. Beyond the sleeping guards, through a doorway that only a few in all the world may pass, lies the next room in, the presence chamber, where the sovereign's chair of state stands empty under its canopy in the dark. The watch keeps this side of that door, but we may go softly through, you and I, as the narration's own small light, and see how a room of majesty looks when the majesty has gone to bed. Come through and keep your voice low. Through the guarded door, then softly into the presence chamber. This was a room of majesty by day. The presence chamber was where the sovereign showed themselves to the court, received ambassadors, gave audience, was seen. At the far end of it stands the chair of state, the throne, set upon a low dais, a few steps up from the floor. And above the chair hangs the canopy of estate, a rich cloth stretched out overhead, embroidered and fringed, the sign of sovereignty itself. By day, to come into this room was to come into the presence of power. Even the empty chair was treated with reverence. Men bowed to the canopy whether the sovereign sat beneath it or not, for it stood for them. The chair itself stood on a low dais, raised a step or two above the floor so that the sovereign was always a little higher than those who came before them. The canopy hung above it like a small roof of state, a ceiling of honour over that one seat. A person of rank crossing this floor by day would uncover their head and bow toward the chair, whether it was filled or empty, for the honour lived in the place and not only in the person. To stand near that chair was to stand near the very idea of the crown, and now, at night, the room is dark and still, and the great chair stands empty under its canopy, and there is something gentle in the sight, not sad. The power has simply gone to bed, like everyone else. The person the whole room is built around is at this hour only a tired human being asleep behind further doors, kept warm like all the rest. The empty chair under its dark canopy is a quiet reminder of the plain thing at the centre of all this grandeur. Even sovereigns must sleep. Even the greatest person in the land lies down at night and lets go of the day, and is, for a few dark hours, simply a sleeper to be kept. A groom of the chamber is here, doing the last work of the room. He moves without hurry, closing it for the night. He draws the heavy curtains across the tall windows, shutting out the last of the dark blue sky, keeping the warmth in. He snuffs the candles down to a very few, and then to none but the one small light he carries. He sees that the fire is safely banked. He straightens a cushion, sets a stool in its place, checks the room with the long habit of a man who has closed it 1,000 nights, and then he too will go, leaving the presence chamber to its darkness and its empty chair. Notice the shape of the palace as we pass through, because it is the same shape all the way in. Room leads to room leads to room, each one deeper, each one for fewer people, each one nearer the sleeper at the heart. The hall for the whole household. The watching chamber for the guard and those with business. The presence chamber for those admitted to the sovereign's public presence, and beyond it, further in, the privy chamber and the bedchamber for the trusted few alone. Rooms within rooms within rooms, like the layers of something precious wrapped for keeping. The further in you go, the quieter it becomes, and the warmer, and the more watched. We are only at the edge of the deep rooms yet. We will go all the way in later when the night is deeper. For now we stand in the dark presence chamber and feel how a room can hold the memory of majesty even when it's empty and still. Let me hold you in this room a little longer, because it holds a gentle contradiction worth resting in. All day, this was one of the most crowded rooms in England. To be admitted to the presence chamber was a prize men schemed for, and when the sovereign was here it was thick with courtiers, pressed close, watching, waiting, hoping to be noticed. And yet the person at the centre of all that press was, in a deep way, the most alone person in the house. Never left, never private, never for a moment unwatched, and so, in the end, kept in a solitude no common servant ever knew. Crowded and solitary, both at once. The room full of people by day, and the great chair standing empty and alone by night, are two faces of the same strange truth about a life lived at the centre of everything. You can feel the walls of the room even in the dark. They are hung with tapestries, whole woven walls of them, catching the last of the groom's light in a dull gleam before he darkens the room. The floor is matted, the air is cooling as the fire sinks, and the deeper you go into these rooms, the fewer people the room is for, and the greater the honour of being let in. The whole palace is built on that idea. That nearness to the sleeper at the heart is the highest thing there is, and that the way to it runs through door after guarded door, each opening to fewer and fewer until only a trusted handful remain. And so the groom goes carefully about the darkening of this room of majesty, and there is a kind of reverence even in that. He does not hurry, and he does not clatter. He treats the empty room as though it were still full, because in a sense it is, for the honour of the place does not go to bed when the sovereign does. He draws the light down slowly, and the great room folds itself into darkness corner by corner, the far walls first, and then the near, until only his own small flame is left, and the empty chair beneath its canopy fades into the dark behind him. There is a deep hush over the state rooms now, deeper than the busy hush of the household world below. Here the quiet is the quiet of majesty at rest, of a room that has done its great work for the day and been let go gently into the night. Rest in it a moment with me before we move on. Even the seat of power sleeps. Even majesty is in the end only a tired thing that must be let go quietly into the dark and kept there till morning, like everyone else under this great roof. The groom moves through his closing without a wasted motion. He draws the last curtain. He checks the banked fire once more. He sets the room to rights for the morning, when it will fill again with light and people and business, and then he lifts his single light, and the tapestries and the empty chair fall back into darkness one by one as he turns away. The groom takes his light and goes, and the great chair is left alone under its canopy in the dark, and here the deep rooms end for now, for we must go back out, into the long ways that join this whole palace together. Beyond the staterooms run the galleries, the great long corridors of the house, cold and moonlit and very quiet, where a single watchman walks his round with the one moving light in all that dark. Let us go out into the galleries and walk them with him a while. Come out now into the galleries, and let us walk them slowly, for they are the long, quiet spine of the whole house. A gallery in a great Tudor palace was a wonderful thing. A long room made for walking, running sometimes the whole length of a range, with windows down one side and hangings or pictures down the other. By day the court walked here for pleasure and for exercise when the weather kept them in, up and down the shining floor talking, in the light from the tall windows. The galleries could run very long, corridor upon corridor joined end to end, so that a person might walk a great distance under one roof without ever going out of doors. They were among the grandest spaces the age could build, and by night they become the loneliest and most beautiful parts of the sleeping house. For now they are empty, and the moon is in them. The windows are tall, filled with small panes of leaded glass, and through them the moonlight falls in pale broken squares along the floor, all down the length of the gallery, one after another, fading into the dark ahead. The floor is laid with rush matting woven from the marsh rushes, and it gives very slightly underfoot and smells faintly green. The hangings on the inner wall stir a little when a draught moves down the gallery, and the whole long space is cold. This is the truth of the great galleries at night, and it is worth sitting with gently. The most magnificent rooms in England were also, after dark, among the coldest. The little fires could not truly warm these long stone and glass spaces. Walk the gallery on a winter night, and you would see your own breath in the moonlight in the finest corridor in the land. Both things are true at once, and a calm heart can hold them together. Here is grandeur, and here is cold. Here is the beautiful long gallery, silver with moonlight, and here is the chill that no fire reaches, and the two live side by side and neither cancels the other. That is how a real place is. Not all warmth, not all hardship, but both, woven together and made bearable by the one small kindness moving through it. For look, down at the far end of the gallery, a light. See how far off it is, that first small point of gold, and how slowly it grows. The gallery is that long. A person could walk here a good while and never reach the end, and by day the court did just that. pacing off the hours of a wet afternoon under this very roof. Now there is only the one light, far away, and the moon laid in pale squares along the floor between here and there. The cold stands unmoving in the air, and the little gold light comes on and on, patient, growing, the one warm thing in all that silver dark. It is the watchman on his round, a single lantern, coming slowly along, the one moving light in all that dark. Watch it come. The soft yellow glow of the horn lantern swings gently as he walks, and it lights the matting under his feet, and a stretch of the hangings beside him, and his own quiet face, and then it moves on, and the dark closes softly behind him where he has passed. He walks the galleries because they must be walked from end to end through the night, so that the whole long reach of the house is kept. He is not hurrying. He knows the distance, and he keeps an even pace, the pace of a man with hours of walking before him, and no reason to rush any of it. His footsteps are soft on the matting. His breath shows a moment in the cold. His lantern is the warmest thing for 100 feet in any direction. Follow that light with me a while as it goes. This is the image to carry down into sleep tonight, if you carry only one. A single lantern, moving through vast dark rooms, one waking light among the sleeping many. It is the watchman here in the gallery. It was the porter at the gate. It will be the baker's candle in the kitchen, and the groom's light by the sleeping door. All night in this great house, a few small flames move gently through the dark while the many sleep, and the flames are people, keeping the night. When you see that light in your mind going quietly along a moonlit gallery, you are seeing the whole soul of this place in one picture. Walk with his light a while, and let me tell you what he passes. Down the inner wall of the gallery hang pictures and tapestries, dim shapes in the moonlight, faces of people long gone, gardens woven in wool, a hunt frozen mid-stride. His lantern brings each one up gold for a moment as he passes, and then lets it go back into the dark. The windows down the other wall show him nothing but the black night, and now and then the faint moving gleam of the river far below, going on past the palace in the cold. His own reflection walks beside him in the black glass, a man and a lantern, keeping pace, and his footfalls are soft and even on the matting one after another, the sound of a night being measured out by a man who has measured out many. He walks these galleries so that the whole reach of the house is held. A palace is not only its warm centre, it is also these long cold arteries that join everything to everything, and if they were left unwatched, the warm centre would not truly be kept. So he walks them, end to end, through the dark hours, and his one light is enough. It does not need to fill the gallery. It only needs to move through it, steadily, so that the house is never for long without a waking presence anywhere along its length. You do not need to follow him the whole way. Let him carry the walking for you. That is what he is for. You may rest and let the light go on down the gallery on your behalf. The watchman comes to the end of the gallery where a door leads on, and beyond it there is a room where a light is always kept, all night, every night, and never let go out. It is the chapel. Let us follow him toward it, and see the one flame in the palace that is never banked and never snuffed. Follow the watchman's light to the chapel door, and then let us go in quietly, for there is a light here that never sleeps. The chapel was the soul of a great house in the older sense, the room set apart where the household came to prayer. In a palace it could be a grand and beautiful place, with a carved and painted roof, and a screen, and stalls of dark wood, and above the altar a hanging lamp. And that lamp is the thing I have brought you here to see. For while every other flame in the palace is rationed, counted, banked, or snuffed, the lamp before the altar is kept burning through the whole night, every night, and is never let go out. It is a small, steady flame in the great dark of the chapel, and someone tends it, so that the house is never at any hour wholly without a waking light. Let us say there is a server who keeps it, an older man, quiet, devout, whose gentle task this is. He comes in the dark to trim the wick and top the oil, so the flame does not fail before morning. He moves in near silence, for the chapel at night is the stillest room in the whole palace, and its stillness is not empty but full, the particular deep quiet of a place kept for prayer. His footsteps are soft. The one lamp burns steady above the altar, and its light gleams a little on the carved wood and the still hangings, and reaches only a little way into the dark, and holds. Watch him tend it a moment, in the great dark room. He comes with a small flask of oil and a careful hand, and he feeds the lamp and settles the wick, and steps back to see that the flame burns true. The little light gleams on the gilding of the screen and the dark, polished wood of the stalls, and reaches up a little way toward the painted roof, and loses itself in the height. Everywhere else the shadows stand deep and unmoving. Only this one flame lives, small and steady, in the middle of all that carved and painted dark. The people of this age thought of the night as a thing to be kept, and kept not only by walls and watchmen but by God. They believed the dark hours were watched over from above as well as within, and the kept lamp in the chapel was a sign of that watching, a flame held up through the darkness on behalf of the whole sleeping house. Whatever you yourself believe, drifting there in the warm, you can feel the tenderness in the idea that someone or something keeps a light burning all night long, so that no soul need ever be wholly in the dark. The palace made that idea real in a single small flame, tended by a single quiet man, in the deepest silence of the house. The server tops the little lamp with oil from a small flask, and trims the wick with a careful hand, so the flame will neither gutter out nor burn too fast, but hold its steady low light through every hour until the sky pales. It's a small thing to do, and he does it in the middle of the night, quietly, for no reward that could ever match the tenderness of it. Then he stands a moment in the pooled light, an old man and a small flame in a great dark room, and the whole sleeping palace lies around him, kept. So here is another kind of keeper, very different from the yeoman with his weapon, and the porter with his keys, and yet doing the same work at heart. The server keeps the lamp, the watchman keeps the gallery, the baker whom we will meet soon keeps the fire and the bread. Each of them in his own way holds a light against the dark for people who will never know his name, and the chapel lamp is the purest of them, because it guards nothing you could steal and warms no one who is near it. It simply burns, all night, a kept flame, so that the house is never without one. Sometimes the gentlest keeping is the one that asks for nothing back. Stay in the chapel with me a moment more in its deep and gentle quiet. There is a stillness here that you do not find anywhere else in the palace, not even in the sleeping galleries, and it is a full stillness rather than an empty one. This is a room shaped by centuries of quiet, a room people came to in order to be still, and something of all that stillness seems to gather and stay. The one lamp burns above the altar, the carved wood holds the dark, and the server moves through it like a man walking on the surface of a pool he does not want to disturb, tending his flame and no more. The night, to the people who lived here, was not simply the absence of the day. It was its own country, with its own rules and its own watchers. They divided it and named its hours, and they believed it was kept from above as surely as the gate was kept from within. The lamp in the chapel was a small sign of that belief made real, a light held up through the whole darkness on behalf of everyone under the roof, the sleeping guest and the sleeping guard and the sleeping boy by the kitchen fire alike. None of them will see it burning. That is rather the point. It burns for them anyway, unseen, all night, so that the house is never wholly given over to the dark. Rest against that idea a while if it comforts you. Somewhere in the house, always, one light is kept that is never let go out. You do not have to tend it. You do not have to know who does. It is simply there, burning low and steady through the darkest part of the night, and it will still be burning when the sky begins to grey. Some of the kindest keeping there is asked nothing of the ones it keeps. It only holds a light and waits for morning with them. The server finishes his tending, bows to the altar and its steady lamp, and withdraws into the dark, leaving the flame to burn on alone as it will burn till dawn. And the thought of that counted, kept and cared for light draws us on to the one office of the whole palace, whose only work is the light itself. For every candle in this house, the white wax and the yellow tallow alike, was made and stored and counted by a single office, under its own officer, and even the burnt ends of the night were gathered up and reckoned at dawn. Let us go and see the keeping of the light. Come with me now to the office they called the chandlery, where all the light of the palace is made and kept and counted. Every flame you have seen tonight came from here. The chandlery or chandlery was the office of candles, and it had its own officer, the sergeant of the chandlery, and its own store of wax and tallow and wick, and its own careful reckoning. Let us stand with the sergeant a while, for his work is one of the quiet wonders of the house. In a palace of 1,000 people, burning candles in every room from dusk to dawn, someone had to make the light and store it and give it out by rank and answer for every inch of it. That was his charge, and he kept it with the strictness of a man who knows exactly what light is worth. There were 2 great kinds of light, and you have already seen them both tonight, and the difference between them is the whole ladder of the house in a single flame. There was the candle of pure beeswax, which they called white light, clean and bright, burning with little smoke and little smell, and there was the candle of tallow, of rendered animal fat, cheaper, yellower, which smoked and guttered and carried the smell of the kitchen. The white wax went to the king and the queen, to the chapel, and to the high rooms of state. The tallow lit the working world, the passages and the offices and the hall. You could walk this whole palace by night and know exactly where you stood in its order by the light beside you, clean wax above, smoking tallow below. The sergeant makes and keeps them both, and the counting. This is the part that tells you what kind of house this was, and I want to give it to you in its own old words, for they wrote it down in the great book of rules drawn up for the king's house, the ordinances made at Eltham in the year 1526. The rule was that the officers should fetch no more light than was truly needed. In the words of the book itself, they were to take no wax, white lights, wood nor coals more than reasonable ought to be spent. No more than reasonably ought to be spent, and more than that. The book ordered that the very ends of the night's candles and torches be gathered and brought in and reckoned each morning. The burnt stubs of the great torches, the wax that had run and cooled, were to be brought in, by the rule, by 9 of the clock in the morning. Even the leavings of the light were counted by 9 of the clock every day. 9 of the clock. Let that be our number for this room, the hour by which every candle end of the night must be gathered and given back. It sounds at first like meanness, and it is easy to read it so, but stay with it a moment and it turns into something else. It is not meanness, it is care and order and respect for a precious thing. Light was labour. Every candle was made by someone's hands from wax gathered or fat rendered, and to waste it was to waste work, and the house did not waste. The same order that gave every soul their candle also gathered every stub at dawn. To keep a thing well is to know its worth down to the last inch, and this house knew the worth of its light to the very ends of the candles. Let me show you a little of the making, for it is warm work and worth the seeing. The white wax candles were made from beeswax, gathered and cleaned and worked pale, and drawn up over and over around a wick until they grew to the right thickness, a slow and patient craft. The tallow lights were made from rendered fat, cheaper and quicker, and it was this smell, the smell of hot fat and smoke, that hung about the making of the commoner light. All of it was stored here, in the sergeant's care, ranked and counted, the fine wax kept apart from the coarse tallow and given out each evening room by room, so much to the sovereign's side, so much to the hall, so much to this office and that passage, each according to its place. The ladder of the house ran straight through his store, wax at the top and tallow below, and he knew it by heart. And he knew the worth of every inch of it, which is why the counting was no cruelty. Think of the sergeant as a man who simply cannot bear to see a good thing wasted. Someone gathered that wax. Someone rendered that fat. Someone drew each candle by hand. To let it burn to nothing uncounted, or to fetch more than was needed while stubs lay unused, was to throw away real labour, and he would not have it in his charge. So the stubs came back by 9 of the clock, and he reckoned them, and the light of the palace went round in its careful circle, given out at dusk and gathered at dawn, and nothing lost. So the sergeant keeps his store and gives out the flames, and waits for the stubs to come back at 9 and reckons them, and it all comes round again the next night. The same careful circle of the light. It is bookkeeping, and it is also a kind of devotion, the devotion of a man who will not let one good thing be wasted in his charge. He trims a wick by his own single candle, and makes a mark in his reckoning, and the great dark house burns on around him, each flame in its place, each one accounted for. Let me leave you with one more picture of this careful room before we go down. The sergeant sits late by his own single light. Among his ranked candles and his coils of wick, his pale blocks of wax and his tubs of tallow, and the small quiet work of the light goes on around him. Here is the beeswax, worth a great deal, kept clean and part. Here is the tallow, humbler, plentiful, smelling faintly of the kitchen even before it is lit. Here are the moulds and the dipping frames, the tools of a trade that makes the very thing by which the whole house sees after dark. It is a homely, honest little kingdom, this office of the light, and he keeps it with the gentle strictness of a man who loves good order for its own sake. And when at last his reckoning is done for the night, he too banks his little fire and pinches out all but one flame, and sits a moment in the near dark he has spent his life holding back. He knows the worth of the dark better than anyone, this keeper of the light, for it is his whole work to push it softly away, candle by candle, room by room, and to gather up what is left at dawn and begin again. The palace burns on around him in the night, each flame in its place, and every one of them, in a sense, passed through his careful hands. And now let us leave the counted light of the upper house, and go down a stair, down past the level of the courts, down into the working heart of the whole palace, where the fires are largest and are never wholly let die, and where, even now, in the deep of the evening, the work of tomorrow's bread has already begun. Let us go down into the great kitchens. Come down with me now, down a worn stone stair below the level of the courts, into the working heart of the whole palace. The air changes as you go down. Up above, in the galleries, the night was cold and still. Down here it is warm, and it smells of a whole day of cooking, roasting meat and wood smoke and bread and ale and spice, all soaked into the old stone. This is the domain of the Lord Steward, the great below-stairs world of the palace, and it is enormous. The kitchens of Hampton Court were not one room but a small industry of them, a great complex of some 55 rooms, each with its own work. There were kitchens and larders and cellars, a boiling house, a pastry, a spicery, a place for fish and a place for flesh, a scullery for the washing, a place for the confectionery, offices for this and offices for that, all joined by passages and stairs, all serving the one great task of feeding the court. 55 rooms given over to nothing but food and its keeping. Hold that number as we go down. It is a whole quarter of the palace, a town within the town, and its business is warmth in the plainest form there is, the warmth of a good meal. By day this place is a roar. We have a visitor's word for it, a real one, and it is worth hearing in his own voice. A Spanish gentleman who came to the palace in the year 1554 looked into these kitchens at the height of their work and could hardly believe them. He wrote that they were, in his words, veritable hells, such as the stir and bustle in them, veritable hells for the heat and the fire and the shouting and the rush of 100 people cooking for 1,000. That was the day. Fires blazing, spits turning, cooks calling, boys running, the sweat and the roar of feeding a court. But that is the day, and we have come at night, and at night the great roar has sunk to a warm hum. Let us say there is a clerk of the kitchen, one of the officers who keeps the accounts and the order of this place, and he is still awake, moving through the quieted rooms with a lantern, seeing the day's work closed and the night's work begun. He is a careful man, a little tired, proud of his kitchens. He checks that the meat for the morning is where it should be. He sees that the fires are banked to hold. He knows, as everyone down here knows, that the kitchen never truly sleeps, because its hardest work begins in the dark. For while the court above is settling into its beds, the deepest truth of the kitchen is that its morning has already started. A court of this size cannot be fed at dawn from cold hearths and empty boards. The bread must be begun in the night. The fires must be kept alive through the dark so they need not be built anew. The first work of the day is done in the last hours of the night, quietly by a few, so that the many may wake to a warm and ready house. The clerk knows this in his bones, and he walks his rounds by lantern light with the ease of a man in the one part of the palace that is never wholly still. Follow his light through the warm, dim rooms. Here is the great open hearth where the roasting was done. It spits at rest now, its fire drawn low. Here is the boiling house with its great coppers. Here is the pastry with its ovens. Everywhere the day's heat lingers in the stone, so that to walk here at night is to walk through a lasting warmth, held in the walls, given back slowly into the dark. It is, in its plain way, one of the kindest places in the whole palace at this hour, this vast warm kitchen, breathing out the day's fire into the night. Let me walk you through a few more of the 55 rooms, softly, so you can feel how much thought went into the feeding of this house. There was the spicery, where the costly spices were kept under lock, pepper and cinnamon and cloves and ginger, so costly they were kept under lock and guarded like treasure. There was the confectionery, where the sweet things were made, the sugar work and the marchpane for the great tables. There was the pastry, with its own ovens for the pies and the baked meats. There was the scalding house, where the fowl and the beasts were made ready, and the saucery for the sauces, and the boiling house with its coppers big enough to bathe in. Each room had its officer and its store and its careful reckoning, and its place in the great ordered dance of feeding a court. 55 rooms, and not one of them idle, not one of them without its purpose. It is a kind of wonder when you sit with it, that anyone could hold so vast a thing in order at all. And held in order it was, by men like our clerk of the kitchen, whose whole work was the reckoning of it. Everything that came into these kitchens and everything that went out was written down, weighed, counted, set against its allowance. How many oxen, how many sheep, how many geese, how much flour and butter and ale, all of it entered in careful columns by clerks who answered for every penny of the sovereign's food. It sounds dry, put like that. But think what it really was. It was the daily proof that the house kept its promise, that the plenty was real and would go on, that tomorrow as today 1,000 people would be fed. The clerk walks his warm dim rooms by lantern light, and in his head the great sum of the house is always running, and it always comes out to the same warm answer. Enough. There is enough, and there will be enough tomorrow. Rest in that drifting there. In this house, on this night, there is enough of everything, and someone has counted it, and it is kept. And at the centre of it all are the fires themselves, the great fires of the main kitchen, banked and glowing, that are never quite allowed to die. Let us go and stand before them, for they are the beating warm heart of the whole below-stairs world, and the man who keeps them through the night is one of the truest keepers in the house. Come and stand before the great kitchen fires and feel the warmth of them on your face in the dark. The main kitchen of a palace like this was built around fire on a scale it is hard to picture. There were great fireplaces, 6 of them in the largest kitchen, each one wide enough to roast whole beasts, each one built to hold a blaze that could cook for hundreds at a time. 6 great fires. Think of the heat of them at full work, and then think of the fuel they ate. A palace this size burned an almost unbelievable quantity of wood. In a single year, the fires of these kitchens could get through something like 1 1/3 million logs. More than 1 million logs, in 1 year, turn to heat and ash to feed the court. It is one of those numbers that stops you, warm as you are. Whole woods, whole hillsides of timber, cut and carted and stacked and burned, so that 1,000 people might eat hot food every day of the year. At night the 6 great fires are not blazing, but they are not out either. They are banked like every other fire in the palace, only more carefully than any, because these are the fires that must survive the night and be ready first in the morning. Let us say there is a night undercook whose charge this is, a younger man, up through the dark hours while the master cooks sleep, and his whole work is the keeping of the fire. He moves along the great hearths with a practised eye. Here he draws the embers together and covers them with ash. Here he lays on a single slow log to hold the heat. Here he checks that a bed of coals is breathing gently under its grey blanket and no more. He is a shepherd of fire walking his flock of hearths through the night, keeping each one alive and low and safe. It is skilled work, and quiet, and almost no one sees it done. A fire banked too low will be dead by morning, and then the whole slow business of striking a light and building a blaze must begin from nothing, and the kitchen falls behind, and 1,000 breakfasts come late. A fire banked too high wastes fuel and, worse, is a danger in a house of timber and cloth. So the undercook walks the line between them all night, keeping each fire just so, just alive, just safe. He knows these hearths the way you know the sounds of your own home in the dark. He can tell by the colour of the glow through the ash whether a fire is holding well, and he tends them not because anyone is watching, but because he is the kind of man who does his work well when no one is watching, which is the best kind there is. Here is a gentle truth to rest in, the same one that runs through the whole night. The fire that warms is also the fire that could harm, and so it is tended with respect. Every banked fire in this timber and tapestry palace was a small managed risk, and the careful covering of the embers each night was as much about safety as about warmth. The thing that kept them all warm could, if let go careless, burn them out, and so it was never let go careless. It was watched and covered and kept by men like this one, all night, in every hearth of the house. The danger and the blessing were the same fire, and the keeping was the difference between them. The undercook finishes his round of the great hearths and stands a moment in their low red light, warm through and through, in the very warmest place in all the palace. Around him the kitchen breathes its held heat into the dark. Above him 1,000 people sleep, most of them never once thinking of the fires kept alive beneath them, so their morning will be warm. He does not mind that they do not think of it. He tends the fire anyway. That is the whole shape of the keeping, given freely, asked of no one, done well in the dark. Think, too, of everything that had to happen before these fires could burn at all. Somewhere beyond the kitchens lay the woodyard, stacked high with logs and faggots and bundled kindling, and the sea coal brought round by ship and carted up from the wharf. All of it had to be gathered and split and stacked and carried in day after day to feed 6 great hearths and all the lesser ones. The number we touched a moment ago, that great yearly count of logs, was not an abstract thing. It was real timber, cut in real woods, by real hands, and hauled to this house, and burned here to warmth. Every log the undercook lays on the banked fire tonight passed through a dozen pairs of hands to reach him, and each of those hands was a keeper too, in its way, part of the long chain that ends in a warm morning. And the undercook stands at the last link of that chain, in the deep of the night, holding it all alive. There is a great stillness to his work once the round is done. He sits a while on a stool near the largest hearth, in the low red glow, and listens to the small sounds of the sleeping kitchen, the settle of a cooling copper, the drip of water somewhere, the faint shift of ash in a grate. Now and then he rises to tend a fire that needs it, and then sits again. He is warm to his bones. He is a little tired, in the good way of the small hours, and he keeps his fires, and lets the house sleep, and waits for the baker's ovens and the first grey of the dawn. Of all the places to keep a watch, his is the warmest, and he knows it, and he is glad of it. And the fires are not the only thing kept down here through the night. All around the warm kitchens lie the cool rooms where the food itself is stored, the larders and the cellars, ordered and guarded, each with its own keeper. Let us step out of the fire's warmth for a moment, into the cool, ordered dark of the places where the plenty of the palace is kept. Step with me out of the kitchen's heat, along a passage, into the cool, still rooms where the food is kept. After the warmth of the fires, the larders are cool, and that is exactly as it should be, for their whole work is to keep food fresh and sweet in the dark. A great house had not one larder but several, each for its own kind of thing. There was the larder for flesh, the meat larder, where the joints and carcasses hung. There was the wet larder, for fish, kept cool and clean. There was the dry larder for meal and flour and nuts and the keeping things that did not spoil. 3 larders, each ordered and kept apart, so that nothing tainted anything else and everything could be found in its place. To open the door of a well-kept larder was to see the plenty of the palace laid out in order, the raw stuff of tomorrow's meals cool and quiet in the dark, and below the larders, or beside them, were the cellars, and here the palace kept its drink. There were 3 of these too. There was the ale cellar for the great daily ocean of ale and beer that a household of this size drank from morning to night, for water was little trusted and little used. There was the wine cellar for the wine kept cool in its casks, and there was the privy cellar, a smaller and more particular store, the private cellar that served the sovereign's own table alone. 3 cellars, each with its own key and its own reckoning, holding the drink of 1,000 people in the cool dark under the house. Let us say there is a yeoman of the cellar who keeps them, a solid, sober man, up in the night to see all secure. He goes with his lantern along the ranks of casks and barrels, and the light gleams on the curved wet wood and the iron hoops, and his footsteps echo a little in the cool stone vault. He checks that the taps are sound, and nothing runs to waste. He sees the doors are locked and the keys upon him. It is careful, trusted work, for drink was valuable and easily pilfered, and a good cellarer answered for every drop. He does his round without hurry, in the deep quiet of the vaults, the one moving light among the sleeping casks. There is a thing worth feeling here, in these cool ordered rooms, and it is the plenty. 1,000 people will eat and drink tomorrow, and the day after, and every day, because these rooms are full and kept and watched. Nobody in this house will go hungry. The larders are stocked, the cellars are deep, the bread is already rising, the fires are already kept. To live inside such certainty was a rare thing in that age, when for most people the fear of not enough was never far away. Here, behind the barred gate, that fear was answered in advance, laid to rest in 3 larders and 3 cellars, ordered and full and kept in the dark. To be fed, and to know you will go on being fed, is one of the deepest kinds of ease there is. Let me show you a little more of how the plenty was kept, for the keeping of food was a craft in itself before ever a fire was lit. In the larders meat was salted down and hung, packed in salt against the time it would be needed, and fish was salted and dried, and spices were used as much to preserve as to flavour. Nothing was left to chance or to spoiling. The dry larder held its meal and its nuts and its stores against the leaner months. The whole art of it was to hold plenty still, to keep the harvest and the slaughter and the catch fresh and sweet and ready long after the day they came in. A great house was a great store as much as a great table, and the storing was as skilled as the cooking, and the cellars were the same, deep and cool and full. The ale alone was reckoned in great quantities, for it was the common drink of every meal and every hour, kept in the cellars in great quantity in its casks. The wine came from far off, up the rivers and across the sea, and lay in its own cool dark, and the little privy cellar kept the sovereign's own drink apart, watched more closely than all the rest. The yeoman of the cellar holds the keys to all of it, and answers for all of it, and walks it in the night with his one light, and the great casks stand around him in the dark like sleeping cattle in a byre, breathing faintly of ale and oak and cool stone. There is a deep quiet down here that is different from the quiet above. The galleries were still with cold. These vaults are still with plenty. It is the stillness of a full store on a dark night, the stillness of enough, and it is one of the oldest comforts a human being can feel. The harvest is in. The casks are full. The larders are stocked. Whatever the winter beyond the walls, in here there is enough, and it is kept, and it is safe. You may let that settle over you like a warm weight. There is enough. It is kept. Sleep is safe here. Stand a moment in the cool dark of the larders with me before we leave them, and take in the strange peace of a full store at night. There is the clean cold smell of salt and meat in the flesh larder, the smell of the sea in the fish, the dry sweet dustiness of meal and nuts in the dry larder. There is the slow drip of something somewhere steady in the quiet. There is the deep cold of stone that has never felt the sun, keeping everything sweet and sound. And there is the plain astonishing fact of the plenty itself, laid up here in the dark, more food than a whole village might see in a season, kept in order and in easy reach, waiting for the morning that will begin to draw it down. The yeoman of the cellar moves through it like a man walking his own orchard by night, at ease among the things he keeps. He has counted them so often that he could tell you blind what stands where, which cask is broached and which is full, how many hams hang in the dark. His keeping, like every keeping tonight, is a keeping against fear, against the old deep fear of not enough, answered here in cold stone rooms full of good things and laid quietly to rest. No one under this roof will want tonight. He has seen to it. He locks the doors upon the plenty, and the plenty sleeps behind them, cool and sweet and safe until dawn. The yeoman of the cellar finishes his round and locks the last door, and the keys are safe upon him, and the plenty of the palace lies quiet and cool behind him till morning. And now let us go to the one room down here that does not rest at all through the night, the one office of the whole kitchen where the work goes straight on through the dark hours, warm and busy and awake. Let us go to the bakehouse, where the morning's bread is being made while the palace sleeps, and where we will find, I think, the warmest keeper of the whole night. Come with me to the bakehouse now and mind the warm doorway, for here is a room that never sleeps. Everywhere else in the palace the night is a time of rest, of banked fires and closed doors. But the bakehouse works straight through the dark, because bread cannot be hurried, and a court must have it fresh at dawn. Bread for 1,000 people and more, for the kitchens of this palace were built to feed a court of some 1,200 souls, and from them went out more than 800 meals every day. All of that begins with bread, and bread begins in the night. So while the rest of the house sleeps, the bakehouse is warm and lit and busy, and the smell of it, the plain deep good smell of baking bread, moves out along the lower passages in the dark and is, I think, the kindest smell in the whole palace. Let us say there is a night baker, the man whose work this is, and let us give him our attention, for he deserves it. He is a broad, calm man, past his youth, with flour worked so far into his hands and his arms that it never quite washes out. He has done this 10,000 nights. He does not need to think about it any more, not with the front of his mind, and so he works in a kind of warm, patient trance, his body knowing the whole slow dance of the bread by heart. He set the dough hours ago, mixed the flour and the water and the leaven, and worked it, and left it to rise in the warmth. Now, in the deep of the night, he comes back to it and finds it risen soft and full under its cloths, and turns it out, and works it again, and shapes it, loaf by loaf by loaf, more loaves than you could easily count, ready for the ovens. The ovens are the heart of his room, great domed ovens of brick, and they are fired through the night so they will be fierce and ready at the right hour. He knows their heat by feel, by holding his arm to the oven mouth, by long habit, without a clock or a glass, for his whole body is the instrument that measures this work. Into the hot ovens go the loaves, on a long wooden peel, and there they bake while he begins the next batch, and the warmth and the smell fill the room and drift out into the sleeping house. There is the fine white bread, the manchet, for the high tables, made of the best sifted flour. There is the coarser, browner bread for the household, the great daily bread of the many. Both are begun in the same warm room, in the same dark hours, by the same floury hands. Feel the warmth of the room on your face as he works, and let it hold you. The ovens breathe out their heat in slow waves, and the air is thick with flour and yeast and the deep good smell of the baking, and the light of the oven mouths glows warm and gold on the low ceiling and the worn wooden tables. There is a rhythm to his working that is almost a lullaby. The soft thud of the dough turned and folded, the scrape of the peel, the quiet sounds of a patient man about a patient task in the middle of the night. It is one of the most soothing places in the whole palace, this warm, bright room among all the sleeping dark, and the baker is its steady heart. Stay in the warmth of the bakehouse a while and feel what it holds. Here, in the deepest part of the night, when the whole great palace lies asleep, one warm room is awake and working, and its work is the plainest kindness there is, the making of tomorrow's bread. The baker is not guarding against anything. He carries no keys and no weapon. He simply makes the bread all night, so that 1,000 people he will never meet may wake to warm loaves and never once wonder how. Of all the keepers of the night, he may be the warmest, because what he keeps is not a wall or a door or a fire against harm, but simply the promise of the morning, rising soft under a cloth in the dark. Let me stay with him a while longer, for his is the warmest work in the house and there is no hurry in it. The bread he makes goes out by rank in the morning, like everything else in the palace. The fine white manchi, small and soft and pale, made from the best and most sifted flour, goes to the sovereign and the high tables. The coarser, browner bread, larger and heavier, goes to the household, to the hundreds who fill the hall. Both come from these same ovens, in these same dark hours, from these same patient hands. A whole court of some 1,200 people will break bread tomorrow, and more than 800 meals will go out from these kitchens through the day, and the very first act of all that feeding is happening now quietly while they sleep in the warm, and the smell of it goes before it. As the loaves bake, the good deep smell of new bread fills the bakehouse and drifts out along the lower passages, up the stairs into the edges of the sleeping house. Perhaps a servant, half waking somewhere in the dark, catches it, and without ever coming fully awake feels only that all is well, that morning is coming, that the house is warm and working round them, and sinks back into sleep the easier for it. That is the baker's gift, given to people who never see him. Not only the bread, but the smell of the bread in the night. A promise carried on the warm air that the morning will come and will be kind. He has done this so many nights that the years of them blur together into one long warm vigil. 10,000 nights, near enough, of setting the dough and firing the ovens and drawing the loaves before dawn. He has grown old at it, and his hands know it better than his mind does, and he would not trade it. To make the thing that feeds everyone quietly in the dark, asking nothing, is a good life's work, and he knows it is, and he is at peace in his warm room while the great house sleeps. He works on, unhurried, in the good warm smell, and the ovens glow and the loaves come and go, and the night wears slowly toward a dawn only he can feel coming. And near him, where it is warmest of all, on the very floor of the kitchens by the banked fires, are the youngest and lowest of the whole household, asleep at last after a long hard day. Let us go softly and look at them, the boys who sleep by the fire, and I promise you we will look at them with nothing but tenderness. Come very quietly now, for I want to show you the younger sleepers in the palace, and I would not wake them for the world. At the very bottom of the great household, below the cooks and the grooms and the yeomen, were the scullions and the kitchen boys. Theirs was the hardest and the humblest work in the house, They scoured the great pots and pans until their hands were raw. They turned the heavy spits before the roasting fires, hour upon hour, roasted on one side by the flames. They carried and fetched and swept and did whatever the older men set them to, from before dawn until late at night. It was a hard life, and I will not pretend otherwise. But I have brought you here at the 1 hour when it is kind, and it is kind now, and that is the truth I want you to hold. For now, at last, the long day is over, and the boys are asleep, and they are asleep in the warmest place in the whole palace. They sleep on the floor of the kitchens, on the flags, close by the banked fires, wrapped in whatever they have, curled together for warmth like a litter of young animals. And the fires the undercook keeps all night keep them too, breathing low red warmth over them as they sleep. After the hardest day, the softest thing they have is this, the warm stone floor by the kept fire, and the deep sleep of the young and the tired. Look at them a moment, and feel only what you would feel for any sleeping child. They are warm, they are fed, they are safe behind the barred gate, and they are asleep. We know they slept here, by the way, and we know it from a tender and unlikely place. When Cardinal Wolsey drew up his great book of rules for the king's house, the ordinances made at Eltham, he turned his mind even to these boys, and the rule he made is a scolding, but read it gently and it opens a small warm window onto them. He ordered that the kitchen children be given proper clothing so they should not go about ragged and half naked in the palace. The rule speaks, in its own words, of doing this for the better, avoiding of corruption and all uncleanness out of the king's house. It is written as a complaint, a great officer's frown at the state of the scullery boys, but turn it over and see what it shows you. It shows us the boys, asleep by the fire, poorly clad, and it shows us someone, the cardinal himself, stopping amid all his great affairs to decide that these lowest children should at least be decently clothed. Even the frown is a kind of care. Even the scolding is the house reaching down to its smallest and covering them. Look at them once more, gently as they sleep. One has an arm flung over his eyes. One is curled tight with his knees to his chest. One has rolled close against another for the warmth, the way tired children do. Their faces, that were smudged and anxious through the long hard day, are smooth now and easy in sleep, and they look, as all sleeping children look, younger than they are. The red light of the banked fire moves faintly over them. The warm stone holds them up, and the great house sleeps above them, and none of its 1,000 grander sleepers lies any warmer or any safer tonight than these boys on the kitchen floor. Here is one of the deep truths of this whole palace, and it lives most plainly in these sleeping boys. The same roof held enormous plenty and real poverty a few yards apart. The kitchens that fed a court of 1,200 stood beside boys who slept on the floor. Both are true, and I will not smooth either of them away. But see how the plenty flowed downward. Even so, the fire that roasted the court's meat is the fire that warms the boys as they sleep. The house that ranked them lowest still fed them, and warmed them, and when it remembered, clothed them. The ladder was steep, and still, from top to bottom, everyone on it was kept. The boy by the fire is the last and least of the household, and he too is warm tonight, and safe and asleep. And that is not nothing. That is, in the end, almost everything. Let me tell you a little of their day, only so that this rest means what it should. From before first light they were up, carrying water and wood, raking fires, scouring the great pots with sand and rough cloth until their arms ached. Through the cooking hours they turned the spits, cranking the heavy iron by hand before the roasting flames. One side of them scorched by the heat, while the other stayed cold hour after hour, so the meat came off evenly done for the tables above. They fetched and ran and were shouted at and shouldered aside by bigger, older men. It was a hard place to be small. I will not dress that up for you. But every hard day has an end, and this is where their day ends, here on the warm flags by the fire, and the ending is soft, and that is the part that is true right now, tonight. And here, more than anywhere, you feel the two truths of the palace lying down together. A few steps away are the larders and cellars full to bursting. There are plenty of the greatest house in the land, and here on the floor are its poorest children, who own almost nothing, asleep on a stone. Both are true, under one roof, on one night. I could tell it to you as an injustice, and there would be a kind of truth in that. But there is a warmer truth lying right here in front of us, and it is the one the fire tells. The house that ranked these boys the lowest still gathered them in at night, and warmed them at its own great fire, and fed them from its own stores, and when a cardinal remembered, clothed them against the cold. They are the least of the household, and they are kept, exactly like the greatest, warm and fed and safe behind the same barred gate. On this night, at this hour, that is what is so. So let them lie there, the boys, breathing slow and deep in the red firelight, their hard day behind them, and a warm floor beneath them. You do not need to worry for them tonight. Tonight they are as safe and as warm as anyone in England. Let that be enough to rest on. Let them sleep, the boys by the fire, warm on the flags in the red light. We will not disturb them. Instead, let us follow, one more step, the hidden work that lets a house this size live at all, the quiet systems beneath everything, the water and the drains and the plain machinery of comfort. For even the way the palace drinks and washes was a wonder of its age, and it too was kept through the night. Come with me to see the hidden machinery of the palace now, the quiet systems that let 1,000 people live under one roof, for they are a marvel too in their plain way. Think, for a moment, of what 1,000 people need in a day, only to live. They need water, a great deal of it, for cooking and washing and brewing and cleaning, and they need somewhere for all the waste of 1,000 bodies to go. In most places, in that age, this was a hard and dirty problem. But a great palace solved it with real cleverness, and the solving was itself a kind of keeping, unseen and unthanked, running through the night like everything else. The water of the palace did not come from the river at its walls, for river water was not clean. Instead, fresh spring water was brought to the palace from hills several miles away, gathered at the springs and carried the whole distance through pipes of lead, laid underground, running downhill all the way, so that clean water flowed into the palace by its own weight, from springs miles off, day and night, without a hand lifted. Several miles of buried pipe bringing sweet water to the house. It was a feat of engineering that would not disgrace a much later age, and it ran silently under the sleeping palace even now. And the other end of the matter, the waste, was managed with the same plain sense. There were close stools in the private rooms, padded seats over basins, emptied by servants so that no one need go out into the cold passages at night. And for the household at large there was a great house of easement, a vast communal privy, built out over a drain that carried everything away to the river. This great house of easement could seat 14 people at once side by side over its channel, 14 at a time. It is a small, startling number, and it makes you smile, and it also tells you the true scale of the place, a house so large that even its privy was built for crowds. All of it, the pipes and the drains and the stools, was tended and kept clean, and kept working by servants whose names no one wrote down, so that the palace stayed sweet and livable for the 1,000 who never thought about it once. And think how quietly it all worked, and works. There was no engine in it, no fire, no wheel, nothing to tend by the hour. The water simply ran, downhill, through the buried lead, from the springs to the cisterns, all night, all year, whether anyone thought of it or not. That is the mark of the very best keeping, the kind that has been so well made that it needs almost no keeping at all, that holds 1,000 people safe and comfortable by nothing more than good sense laid down long ago and left to run. Someone chose those springs, someone dug those miles of trench, someone jointed and sealed that lead, and then they left it and it ran, and it is running under the sleeping palace this very moment, clean and cold and silent. Let us say there is a keeper of the conduits, a man who knows the water and its ways, and he is one of the quiet keepers too. He knows where the pipes run and where they might block or freeze. On a hard winter night he might go out with a lantern to see that a cistern has not iced, that the water still runs, that the morning will have what it needs. He works in the dark and the cold, at the very edge of the household, on a thing no one thinks about until it fails, so that it never fails. His is perhaps the most invisible keeping of all, and yet without it the whole warm house could not go on. Let me give you the shape of it, for it is genuinely lovely, this old cleverness. Out on the hills, several miles from the palace, the springs were gathered into little stone conduit houses, small strong buildings built over the water at its source. From there the water ran into pipes of lead, jointed and sealed, laid in trenches through the fields and under the roads, running always gently downhill, mile after mile, all the way to the palace. It needed no pump and no wheel and no labour once it was laid, only the patient fall of the land, carrying clean water down from the hills to the house by nothing but its own weight. Into great cisterns it came, and from the cisterns to the kitchens and the courts and the fountains, fresh and sweet, while the river ran brown and untrusted at the very walls. The people who built this were not our ancestors of yesterday. They were the builders of a Tudor palace, and they piped spring water several miles to their door, and it worked, and some of it works yet. And the keeping of it went on in the dark like everything else. Our conduit keeper knows the whole hidden run of it, where the pipes dip and where they rise, where a hard frost might catch them, where a blockage might start. On a bitter night he takes his lantern out to the cisterns and the conduit heads, and sees that the water still moves, that nothing has frozen solid, that the morning will have what it needs to cook and brew and wash for 1,000. He's out in the cold at the very edge of the household, tending a thing no one thinks about, so that no one ever has to think about it. When you turn a tap in your own home tonight, and clean water comes unthought of, remember that it has always taken someone somewhere out in the dark, keeping it flowing while you sleep. It is one of the oldest and most invisible kindnesses there is. There is something to rest in here, in this hidden machinery. So much of what keeps us safe and comfortable is unseen, and was always unseen, and was tended by people we will never know. The water that ran clean into this palace, the waste that ran cleanly out, the fires kept, the bread rising, the gate barred, the watch walking, all of it a great gentle system of care, most of it invisible, holding 1,000 lives safe and warm through the dark. You rest tonight inside such systems too, unseen hands and quiet machinery keeping your own night safe, more of them than you will ever count. It has always been so. Someone, somewhere, is keeping the water running while you sleep, and now we have walked the whole working world below stairs, the kitchens and the fires, the larders and cellars, the bakehouse and the boys, and the hidden ways of water. It is time to climb again, up out of the warm deep of the house, and go inward this time, past door after guarded door toward the still heart of the whole palace, the royal lodgings, where the trusted few keep the very centre of the night. Let us go up and in. Come up with me now, out of the warm deep of the kitchens, and let us go inward, toward the very heart of the house. We climb the stair and leave the working world below, and come again into the state rooms. But now we do not stop at the presence chamber, where we turned back before. Now we go on, further in, past the door where the ordinary court must halt, into the private world of the sovereign, the royal lodgings. And I want you to feel the change as we go, because the whole plan of the palace is built to make you feel it. Each room we pass through is deeper than the last, and quieter, and for fewer people, and warmer, and more watched. It is a journey inward, room within room within room, like the opening of something wrapped many times over for keeping, until you reach the small precious thing at the centre. First there is the withdrawing chamber, the room the sovereign withdrew to from the public presence, a step back from the world into something more private. Beyond it, further in, are the private lodgings proper. The rooms grow smaller and finer as we go. The tapestries are richer. The fires are banked lower and gentler now, for these rooms are kept warm and close, and the great blazes of the public rooms would be too much here. Everything softens inward. The light is less. The hush is deeper. Even the air feels held. And at each threshold someone stands or sleeps or watches. This is the thing to understand about the deep of a great house. The further in you go, the fewer people may pass, and the more carefully each door is kept. At the outer doors, the whole household might come and go. Further in, only those with business. Further still, only the trusted servants of the body. And at the last door, only a handful of souls in all the world. To pass from room to room here was to pass a series of quiet judgments, each door a filter, each threshold a mark of trust. Rooms within rooms within rooms, and at the centre of them all, the sleeper, the whole palace is built around. Let us say a gentleman usher of the chamber walks us in, one of the officers of these private rooms, a man of grave and quiet manners, for loud manners have no place here. He carries a single soft light. He moves without hurry and without noise. He knows exactly how far he may go and where he must hand us on to others closer still. And as he leads us inward, the sounds of the great house fall away behind us, the murmur of the hall, the ring of the kitchens, the tread of the watch, until there is only the hush of the deepest rooms and the small sound of our own soft steps. Feel how safe it is, this deep in. If the whole palace is an ark against the dark, then these inmost rooms are the very heart of the ark, the most guarded, the most kept, the warmest and stillest place in all of England on this night. Ring upon ring of wall and door and watch stand between this hush and the cold, dark fields beyond. Nothing of the night outside can reach here, and that in the end is what all the walls and the gates and the watches are for, to make at the very centre one perfectly kept and peaceful place where a tired human being may lie down and let go of the whole world and simply sleep. Let me hold you a moment in these withdrawing rooms, in the deepening hush, for the feeling of them is worth dwelling in. A withdrawing chamber was exactly what its name says, a room to withdraw into, away from the press and the display of the public rooms, into something smaller and more truly one's own. The sovereign might sit here of an evening among a few trusted companions, at cards or music or quiet talk, in the firelight, a little released from the great weight of being seen. And now, at night, these rooms are the deepest and best kept in the house. The tapestries here are the richest whole walls of woven silk and gold thread that glow softly in the low light. The chairs are cushioned, the floors are matted and warm, and every fire is banked to that gentle, even, low red glow that gives warmth without a leaping flame, the safest and most comfortable fire there is, kept so on purpose in these close rooms where the sleeper will lie. And with every room we pass, the world grows quieter. It is a strange and lovely thing to walk inward through a great house at night and to feel the sound fall away layer by layer. The ring of the kitchens is long gone. The murmur of the hall is far behind. Even the tread of the watch is muffled now by distance and by cloth. Here there is only the softest hush, the faint breath of a banked fire, the whisper of the usher's own robe as he moves, and if you listen, the deep silence of thick walls that hold the night out and the warmth in. Each room is a further remove from the cold and the dark, a further wrapping around the still centre, and the deeper you go, the more you feel not shut in but sheltered, folded away, kept. There are few feelings in all of history as safe as the feeling of these inmost rooms on a winter night, and you may borrow it now and let it hold you as it held them, and you may come all this way inward with me and ask nothing at all of yourself, for the walking is mine to do and the keeping is theirs. You need not hold the plan of the house in your head. You need not remember a single room we have passed. Let them blur softly together behind us, the gate and the hall and the galleries and the guarded doors, into one long warm sense of going deeper into safety. That is all these rooms really are in the end. Layers of warmth and watchfulness, folded one inside the next, with something precious kept at the very middle, and tonight drifting there the precious thing kept at the middle might as well be you. Feel yourself carried gently inward, then past door after soft closing door, handed on from keeper to keeper, into the stillest and best kept part of the whole great house. The fires grow gentler, the hush grows deeper, the cold and the dark fall further and further behind. There is no safer place in all of England tonight than the one we are walking slowly toward, and nothing in the night can follow us in. Let it draw you inward, and downward, and under. The gentleman usher pauses at a door finer than the rest, and lowers his voice to almost nothing, for beyond it are the trusted few who serve the sovereign's own person, the small circle nearest the heart of the house. Let us go through, softly, and meet them. Through the door, then, into the privy chamber, and speak low, for we are among the most trusted servants in the kingdom now. The privy chamber was the private chamber of the sovereign, and to serve in it was one of the highest honours the court could give. The people who worked here were few and chosen with the greatest care, for they came nearer the sovereign's own person than almost anyone alive. In the days of the old king, the whole establishment of the privy chamber was a small and intimate band. There were 6 gentlemen of the privy chamber, and 2 gentlemen ushers, and 4 grooms, and a barber, and a page. That was near enough the whole of it. A few dozen hands, at most, to whom the private care of the sovereign was given. Everyone else in that palace of 1,000, however great, served at a further remove. Only this small circle served the body itself. Think what their work was. They dressed and undressed the sovereign. They warmed the clothes at the fire before they were put on. They kept the private rooms, tended the private fire, brought the food and the wine, stood near through the private hours of the day. It was intimate, personal, careful work, the work of a great household's most trusted servants, and it was bound about with rules of manner and discretion. The old book of the household, the ordinances made at Eltham, set down the very spirit in which it was to be done. The gentlemen of the privy chamber were to serve, in the book's own words, with humble, reverent, secret, and lowly service. Humble, reverent, secret, and lowly. That was the whole tone of it. Not proud, though they were nearest the throne, humble and quiet and discreet, keeping what they saw to themselves, serving the person, and never presuming on the nearness. Let us dwell with one of them, a groom of the privy chamber, a younger man of good family, honoured almost beyond his years to hold this place. He has served through the evening in the warm, close rooms, and now the day's duty draws toward its end, and the greatest part of his charge begins, the settling of the sovereign for the night. He moves softly. He has learned to be almost silent, to anticipate, to be present without being felt. It is a strange and rarefied life, this, to spend your days in the private rooms of the greatest person in the land, near enough to hear them breathe, and to keep it all secret and humble and low. But it is also, in its way, a life of deep trust, and he feels the weight of that trust as an honour, not a burden. Look about the privy chamber as the groom tends it, and see how the deepest rooms were furnished for the night. There is a low bed or a pallet for whichever of them will lie nearest. There is a close stool, richly covered, for the private hours. There is wine warming by the hearth, and bread set by, and a light kept low. There are the warmed clothes laid ready, and the fire tended small and even, and everything within reach, so that the sovereign need never call twice nor want for anything through the dark. It is the most attended sleep in the whole kingdom. This, wrapped about with quiet service, every small comfort foreseen, and set ready by hands that have learned to move without a sound, and the groom moves among it all as though the room itself were already sleeping, soft-footed, gentle-handed, present and unseen. This is the very art the book asked of him, to serve so quietly that the service is never felt, only the warmth and the ease it leaves behind. He has grown very good at it over his years here. He can cross the room and mend the fire and set a cup ready and withdraw again, and the peace of the place is never once disturbed. There was reward in it too of the plain kind. The service of the body was paid, and paid well by the standards of the time. A gentleman of the privy chamber might have £50 in a year, a gentleman usher £30, a groom £20, real sums in that age, and all of it on top of the food and fuel and light the court already gave. To hold a place in the privy chamber was to be kept, and paid, and honoured, and near the sun of the whole court. Men schemed their whole lives for a place like this groom's, and here he is, holding it, on an ordinary night, doing the quiet, careful work it truly was. Let me fill out the little circle for you, for each of them had their place. There was the barber, who kept the sovereign's beard and hair, a man trusted with a blade at the royal throat, which tells you the depth of the trust alone. There was the page, the youngest of them, learning the ways of the private rooms, running the small errands, growing up in the closest service of the crown. There were the grooms, who did the plainer work of the chamber, tended the fires, warmed the linen, kept the rooms, and over them the gentlemen and the gentlemen ushers, who ordered it all. A small household within the household, a handful of people bound together by nearness and by secrecy, keeping the private life of the sovereign among themselves and telling none of it beyond the door. And there is a quiet contradiction in their lives worth resting in, the same one that ran through the empty presence chamber. To serve in the privy chamber was to be nearer the sovereign than the greatest duke in the land, and yet the whole art of it was to be unseen, humble, silent, present without ever presuming. They were closest and they were lowest, both at once, by the very rule of the book. They saw the sovereign as almost no one else did, tired, unwell, ungrand, simply human in the private hours, and they kept every bit of it secret, and served it humbly, and thought it the highest honour of their lives. There is a strange grace in that, in being trusted so deeply that your whole duty is to see much, and say nothing, and serve with love. Our young groom holds that grace tonight, moving soft and unnoticed through the warm, close rooms, and counts himself, rightly, among the most fortunate men in England. And now that work turns to the bed, for the settling of the sovereign for the night was not a small or simple thing. It was a ceremony, careful and old, and at the heart of it was the great bed itself, which had to be made and searched and made safe before ever the sleeper came to it. Let us go through to the bedchamber and watch the making and the keeping of the greatest bed in England. Come through to the bedchamber now, softly, and watch how the greatest bed in the land was made ready for the night. The making of the sovereign's bed was no ordinary chore. It was a solemn and careful ceremony, done by trusted servants under strict old rules, for this was the bed the ruler of the realm would lie in through the dark and defenceless hours of sleep, and everything about it had to be safe. And here we meet again the corps we glimpsed in the watching chamber, the yeomen of the guard, for the old bed duties belonged in part to them. Let us take a yeoman of the guard as our figure once more, for this is the chapter where his corps comes fully into its own. The yeomen of the guard were founded by the first Tudor king, Henry VII, in the year 1485, as the sovereign's own bodyguard, and they have existed in an unbroken line from that day to this. They are the oldest military corps in Britain, 1485. Hold that year a moment, drifting there. The guard that kept the bed in this very palace was founded then, and it has never once been disbanded, and it exists still in the same livery, keeping the same sovereign's person more than 500 years on. When you see them now, on great days, you are seeing a living thread that runs straight back to nights like this one, and their duties, in the old days, were close and domestic, as well as martial. It is recorded that they made and watched the royal bed. It is recorded that they tasted the sovereign's food and drink as a guard against poison before it was served. It is recorded that one of the guards slept each night just outside the door of the sovereign's bedchamber, a living lock upon the last threshold. So close and so bodily was their keeping that two of their oldest ranks still carry the memory of it in their very titles, the yeoman bed-goer and the yeoman bed-hanger, names left over from the nightly making of the bed and the hanging of its curtains. The words themselves are a keepsake of exactly this, the careful nightly making of a sovereign's bed by trusted hands. Watch the making, then. The great bed is a huge carved frame strung with ropes, piled with feather mattresses, dressed with sheets of the finest linen, blankets, a furred coverlet, and hung all round with heavy embroidered curtains that may be drawn to make a warm dark room within the room. The servants make it with care, smoothing each layer, and they search it as they go, feeling through the bedding, making sure that nothing has been hidden there that should not be, that all is clean and safe and sound. It sounds a strange thing to search a bed, but the person who would sleep here was the realm itself, in a manner of speaking, and their safe rest was a matter of the whole kingdom, and so the bed was made and searched with a gravity that no other bed in England received. There is something moving in all this care, once you look past the grandeur. Strip away the titles and the ceremony, and what is here is the oldest thing of all, people making a bed safe and warm and soft for someone to sleep in, and standing guard at the door so that the sleeper need fear nothing. It is only what a parent does for a child, done at the scale of a kingdom, with a corps of soldiers and a book of rules. But at its heart it is the same tenderness. Make the bed soft, make the room safe, keep the door, let the sleeper sleep. The greatest bed in the land was kept by exactly the same love in the end that keeps the smallest. Let me set the great bed fully before you, for it is a marvel of warmth in itself. The frame is huge and carved, dark oak worked with figures and patterns, a piece of furniture grand enough to be an heirloom of the realm. Across the frame the ropes are strung and pulled taut, and on them lie the mattresses, a firm one below and a soft deep one of feathers above, so the sleeper rests on a cloud held in a cage of oak. Then the sheets, of the finest linen the kingdom could make, smooth and cool and clean, then wool blankets and a coverlet rich and warm, perhaps furred or lined, and around the whole bed hang the curtains, heavy and embroidered, on rails at the tester overhead, so that when they are drawn the sleeper lies in a small warm room of cloth, a still dark pocket that holds the body's own heat and shuts out every draught. It is, for all its grandeur, simply the warmest and softest bed that the age knew how to make, built to keep one person perfectly warm through the coldest night. And the guarding of it went beyond the making. It is recorded that the guard tasted the sovereign's food and drink before it was served, so that no harm could come by poison. It is recorded that one of them slept each night just beyond the bedchamber door, so that the very last threshold before the sleeper was a living man. All of this care, the searching, the tasting, the sleeping at the door, may sound to us like the strange ritual of a distant world. And so it partly is. But at its root it is the plainest tenderness there is, dressed up in the ceremony of a kingdom. It is the making of a safe, warm bed for someone to sleep in, and the keeping of the door so they need not be afraid. The realm did for its sovereign, with soldiers and rules and titles, only what love does everywhere, every night, for the ones it will not leave unkept. And the core that did it then does it still, 500 years unbroken, which is a kind of permanence to marvel at as you drift, that this very keeping has never once stopped. The bed is made, and searched, and turned down, and the curtains stand ready to be drawn. And now the last lights of the day are let down low, and a small low bed is drawn out from beneath the great one, for the servant whose turn it is to sleep nearest the sleeper. Let us stay for that, the quietest and most tender arrangement in the whole palace, the truckle bed by the great bed. Stay very quiet now, for we have come to the still centre of the whole house, and the sovereign is being made ready for sleep. The settling of the sovereign for the night was a slow and gentle ceremony, done by the trusted servants of the body. The rich clothes of the day were taken off piece by piece and folded and carried away. A nightshirt, warmed at the fire, was put on. There was washing, and there were prayers said quietly in the warm room, for the people of this age took their souls to bed with them, and did not lie down without commending the night to God. The fire in the bedchamber, which had warmed the room all evening, was banked now to a low and gentle glow, safe behind its guard, giving out a soft red warmth into the dark without a flame to fear, and the great bed stood ready, made and searched and turned down, its curtains waiting. And when the sovereign was at last abed, and the heavy curtains were drawn around the great bed, the room did not empty. That is the thing I have brought you here to see. The sleeper at the very centre of the palace was never left alone in the dark, for from beneath the great bed was drawn out a small low bed on wheels, a truckle bed, rolled out every evening and away every morning, and on it lay down a trusted servant of the body, so that through the whole night someone slept close by the sovereign, within reach, within call, on the floor of the very same room. Let us give that near sleeper our last tenderness in these rooms. Let us say it is the young groom of the privy chamber we met before, and tonight it is his turn to lie on the truckle bed. Think what that was. To sleep on the floor of that room, a few feet from the greatest person in the land, was the highest honour the whole household could give. Men of good family counted it a glory to lie there on a low bed in the dark. He settles onto the truckle bed in the banked firelight, and lies still and listens. Beyond the drawn curtains, the breathing of the sleeper slows and deepens and settles into the rhythm of true sleep. The fire glows low and red behind its guard. The room is warm and close and utterly quiet. And the young groom lies awake a little while in that warm dark, the nearest waking soul to the sleeping heart of the whole kingdom, and then he too lets go and sleeps. Let me slow us right down here, at the still centre, for this is the quietest place in the whole night, and it deserves a quiet dwelling. The ceremony of going to bed was unhurried and gentle. The rich garments of the day were taken off one by one and folded and carried away to be kept. A nightshirt held to the fire until it was warm was drawn on. There was water for washing, and a cloth, and then there were prayers said low in the warm room, the sleeper commending the coming night to God, as almost everyone in that age did before they lay down, high and low alike. Nothing about it was rushed. It was the slow, careful laying down of the day, the letting go of the weight of it, piece by piece, until there was nothing left to do but sleep. And the fire watched over it all, banked now to that low, safe red, throwing a gentle warmth into the room without a single leaping flame to fear in the dark. Feel how good that is, the banked fire in the bedchamber, the warmest and safest hearth in the house, kept low and glowing behind its guard so the room stays warm all night and nothing can catch. It is the same banked fire we have followed from the great hall down through the kitchens and up into these rooms, the same small careful act done everywhere in the house. And here it reaches its tenderest form, warming the sleep of the one the whole palace is built around. And here also the near sleeper keeps his silent vigil on the low bed, awake a little in that red glow, the closest waking soul to the sleeping heart of it all, until sleep takes him too, and the room holds only breathing and warmth and low light. We will not draw the curtains of the great bed. We will leave the sleeper unlooked at as the whole night has left them, a peaceful presence at the centre and no more. All our care tonight has been for the ones who keep the sleeper, and it is right that it stays there. The sovereign sleeps, kept and warm and guarded into the deepest rest in England, and around that sleep, ring upon ring, the whole great house holds. That is all we need to know of the person behind the curtains. They are asleep and they are safe, and they are kept, exactly like the boy by the kitchen fire, only at the very centre of all the rings of keeping. So let us stand a moment in this deep still warmth, at the very centre of the night, and let it hold us. There is no quieter place in all of England now than this one room. The fire glows low and red behind its guard. The great bed is a dark, warm island of drawn curtains. The one near sleeper breathes on his low bed. And around this room, wall upon wall and watch upon watch, the whole vast palace stands between it and the cold, dark world. Nothing hurries here, nothing threatens here. The night is simply being passed, in warmth and safety, exactly as it was always meant to be passed. Let that stillness reach all the way to you, wherever you are lying. You're far from this room in years, and yet the peace of it is the same peace that is offered to you tonight. The peace of a warm room, a low fire, a safe door, and someone somewhere awake and keeping the night. Borrow it freely. It was real once, and it is real for you now. Let the deep quiet at the heart of the palace be the quiet you sink down into. So here at the heart of the house the fire is banked, and the near sleeper sleeps on his low bed, and the great bed is still behind its curtains. But the palace has another side, a whole mirror world we have not yet entered, the Queen's side of the house, with its own rooms and its own keepers. And there, in a shared chamber, a group of young women sleep under the watch of one older woman set to keep them. Let us cross quietly to the Queen's side and meet the gentlest keeper of them all. Come with me across the house now to the Queen's side, for a great palace held not one royal household but two, side by side, mirror to mirror. The sovereign's consort, the Queen, had her own lodgings, her own rooms of state and privy rooms, her own servants and officers, a whole second household running in parallel to the first. And within it, as within the king's side, were the same rings of keeping, the same guarded doors, the same trusted few. But the Queen's side had something the king's did not, and it is the sweetest small world in the whole palace, and I have saved it for last among the deep rooms. The Queen's side had the maids of honour, and it had the woman set to keep them. The maids of honour were young gentlewomen, girls of good family, sent to court to serve the Queen and to be in the way of a good marriage and a good future. They were young, some of them very young, far from their own homes, living together in the great strange world of the court, and they did not sleep scattered. They slept together, in a shared chamber, a dormitory of young women, and over them was set an older woman, whose whole charge they were. She was called the Mother of the Maids. It is a lovely old title, and it means just what it says. She was for these girls a mother in the place of their mothers, set to guard them and guide them, and keep them safe in a place that could be hard on the young and unwatched. Let us dwell with her, for she is the gentlest keeper we have met all night. Let us say she is a woman past her middle years, widowed perhaps, steady and kind and not to be fooled, who has seen many a girl come green to court and leave it grown and wed. Tonight, as every night, she does her rounds of the maid's chamber before she takes her own rest. The girls are settling to sleep in their shared beds, in the light of a banked fire and a candle or two. She moves among them quietly. She sees that the fire is safe. She checks the shutters are barred against the cold and the dark. She has a soft word for one who is homesick, a firm one for two who are still whispering and giggling when they should be asleep. She counts them in her heart, the way a shepherd counts, making sure all her charges are in and safe and settled. And only when they are all quiet, all breathing slow, all safe, does she at last take her own rest. This is the shape of her keeping, and it is the oldest shape there is, older than palaces, older than kings, the one who lies down last when everyone in her care is safe, the mother who checks the sleeping children one more time before she lets herself sleep. She is doing in a queen's palace exactly what has been done in every home in every age, by whoever loved the sleepers enough to stay awake until they were all safely down. There is a whole small world of young women under this one older woman's watch, and she holds it as tenderly as any keeper in the house holds anything. Let me stay with these young women a little longer, for their small world is one of the tenderest in the palace. Think of them as they truly were. Girls of gentle birth, some of them barely more than children, sent away from their own homes and their own mothers to serve at court, to learn its ways, to be seen, and in time, well married. It was a great chance, and it was also a lonely one to be young and far from home in so vast and watchful a place. And so they slept together in one chamber and were kept together under one woman's eye, and that shared chamber with its banked fire and its barred shutters was, for each of them, the nearest thing to home that the court could give. And the mother of the maids gave it to them night after night, in 100 small acts no one recorded, a word for the homesick one, who lies awake missing a house she may not see for a year, a gentle firmness with the two who cannot stop their whispering, a last look at the fire, a last touch at the shutters, a last quiet count of her sleeping charges before she lets herself rest. She's nobody's queen and nobody's great officer. She holds no keys to the treasure and tastes no food against poison. But she keeps these girls as surely as the yeoman keeps the sovereign, and with a warmth all her own, standing between them and every hardness of the great strange world beyond their chamber door. Both things are true of these young women at once. They are far from home, and they are safe. They are alone in the world, and they are held. And the holding is done by one steady older woman who lies down last, when all her girls are down, exactly as someone lay down last in your own life once, so that you could sleep without knowing you were kept. Let me widen the picture a moment to the whole of the Queen's side, for it is a palace within the palace. It has its own presence chamber and its own privy rooms, its own guarded doors and its own trusted servants, its own portion of the kitchen's work and its own fires banked for the night. Everything the King's side has, the Queen's side mirrors, so that 2 royal households sleep beneath the one great roof, each kept as carefully as the other. And through all of it move the same kinds of keepers we have met all night, the grooms and the ushers and the watch, doing on this side just what they do on that, so that a whole second world of sleepers is held as gently as the first. But it's the maid's chamber that stays with me, here on the Queen's side, that little room full of sleeping girls under one older woman's eye. Of all the many rooms in this vast house, that small warm chamber may be the tenderest because its keeping is so plainly love, not duty, not ceremony, not the rule of any book, but a woman staying awake until her girls are down, because that is what you do for the young ones in your care. It is the oldest keeping there is, and it needs no palace to happen in. It is happening somewhere tonight, in 1,000 ordinary houses, exactly as it happens here in a Queen's. So the maids sleep, safe under the mother of the maids, on the Queen's side of the great still house. The King's side sleeps, kept by the truckle bed and the guarded door. The whole deep heart of the palace lies quiet now, warm and watched, ring within ring, and above it all, out on the very roof of the house, under the moon and the cold stars, a lone figure walks the leads, and keeps the whole of it in his sight. The palace is entering the deep of the night now. Let us climb, one last time, to the very top of the house, and stand with the watch on the roof as the deepest hours come on. Come up with me now, one last climb, all the way to the top of the house, out onto the roof under the open sky. High above the sleeping courts, the great palace has a roof of leads, broad flat walkways of lead sheeting between the ridges and the chimneys, where a man may walk the whole top of the house under the stars, and there is a man walking there now, a yeoman of the guard keeping the last and highest watch of all. Come and stand beside him a while, in the cold, clean air above everything. From up here you can see the whole shape of the palace laid out below, court within court, roof within roof, the tall twisted chimneys standing black against the sky, and here and there the faint glow of a window where a light is still kept, and beyond the walls the dark country, the fields and the river gleaming faintly under the moon, and the far scattered lights of the sleeping land. It is very quiet up here, and very cold, and very beautiful. The yeoman paces slowly along the leads, his breath showing white, his lantern in his hand, though the moon is bright enough almost to walk by. He is watching over the whole house at once from up here, the highest keeper of all, and everything below him sleeps. He walks by the watches of the night, the old divisions of the dark into which the night was parted, each watch a span of hours kept by someone before the next took over. His is one of those watches. He walks it out, hour by hour, up here where the wind is the only company, so that everyone under all those roofs may sleep untroubled. Let us do the thing the narration may do when the world it walks has fallen asleep. Let us go out for a moment from the yeoman on the leads, out over the whole sleeping palace, and see it all held in the dark, and then come gently back. Below him, the great hall lies empty and warm, its fire banked under grey ash, its high roof holding the darkness. Below him, the galleries run long and moonlit and cold, kept by a single moving light. Below him, the chapel lamp burns steady and alone. Below him, deep down, the kitchens breathe their held warmth, and the bakehouse glows, and the boys sleep by the fire. Below him, ring within ring, the royal lodgings lie hushed and guarded, the truckle bed drawn out, the great bed still behind its curtains, and below him, on the queen's side, the maids sleep under one kind woman's watch. The whole vast house, 1,000 souls, asleep and kept, and above them all this one man walking the cold leads under the moon, holding them in his sight. And here, for the first time, let me give you 3 small things to hold. 3 things that are true of the whole house right now, this very hour. The gates are barred, the fires are banked, the watch is set. Say them over softly to yourself if you like, as the yeoman might say them over to himself on his cold round, checking the house in his mind and finding it well. The gates are barred, the fires are banked, the watch is set. Everything that needs doing has been done, everything that needs keeping is kept. There is nothing left tonight but to sleep, and be watched over, and let the hours pass. Stay up here with him a while in the cold and the quiet, for there is nothing to do and nowhere to be, and that is the whole gift of this hour. The wind moves soft over the leads, the chimneys stand black and still. The moon lays a pale light along the lead walkways and the ridges, and the yeoman's slow steps make almost no sound. He is not looking for anything. There is nothing to find. He is only being here, awake, above it all, so that the house has a waking pair of eyes at its very top through the darkest hours. That is enough. That has always been enough. A house is kept not by fear but by presence, by someone simply being awake in it while the others sleep, and up here on the leads that keeping is at its purest, a lone man and a lantern under the whole turning sky. And from up here the night feels less like a danger held off, and more like a wide calm thing the house is resting inside. The dark is soft, not fierce. The cold is clean. The stars are out over the chimneys, the same stars these sleepers were born under, and will die under, wheeling slowly on while the palace sleeps. The yeoman has walked these leads on many nights, and he knows this feeling well, the deep peace of the small hours seen from the top of a sleeping house, and he would not trade his cold, lonely watch for a warm bed below, not tonight. Someone must keep the height. He is glad it is him. The yeoman comes to the end of his walk along the leads and turns and paces back, patient, unhurried, with all the night still before him. From up here you can hear the whole shape of the night's quiet. There is the small voice of the wind in the tall chimneys. There is the far cry of some night bird out over the dark fields. There is the river somewhere below, moving on as it always moves, and under it all felt more than heard. The vast soft silence of 1,000 people asleep, the deep hush a great house makes when it has drawn itself in and let go of the day. The yeoman stands inside that hush, high and cold and awake, and lets it settle around him and keeps his watch within it. It is a lonely post, the leads, and a cold one, and yet there is a peace in it the warm rooms below do not hold. Up here a man is alone with the night and the stars and the whole sleeping house beneath his feet, and there is nothing to do but be faithful, and being faithful is easy on a night like this, when nothing stirs and the whole world seems to be resting at once. He would not call it beautiful. He has no words for that. But he feels it in the cold and the quiet, the strange grace of keeping watch over a sleeping house from the very top of the world. And below him, just inside the roof, in the passages and the lodgings, there are the lesser keepers who are not walking at all, but lying down across the very doors they keep, so that the house is guarded not only from the leads above but at every threshold within. Let us go down softly among the sleeping doors and see how a great house is kept from the inside by people already asleep. Come down softly from the roof into the warm inner passages and walk with me among the sleeping doors. There is a thing about a great Tudor household that is strange to us now, and very tender once you understand it. Almost no one of any rank slept behind an unwatched door. All through the lodgings, the grooms and lesser servants did not go away to some far dormitory at night. They slept where they served, and often that meant they slept across the very threshold of the room they kept, lying down in the doorway itself or just within it, wrapped in wool and their day clothes, their own sleeping bodies the last lock on the door. To reach the sleeper within, you would first have to step over the sleeper across the sill, walk the dark passages with me and see it. Here, across the door of a great chamber, a groom lies asleep, breathing slow, a folded cloak for a pillow. There, just inside another door, another. All through the deep of the house, at threshold after threshold, a sleeping servant lies, so that the palace, lying down for the night, lies down like a single body, each part keeping the part beyond it. The great are guarded by the less great, and the less great by the lesser still, all the way down. A whole household holding itself safe in its sleep by the simple, old fact of a person lying across a door. And so no one here is truly alone in the dark, and that, I think, is the gentlest thing about it. A person of rank in this house was almost never quite by themselves, and almost never quite in company either. Someone slept at the foot of the bed. Someone slept across the door. Someone was always within call all night, every night. We prize our solitude now, and it is a good thing to prize. But there is an old and different comfort in the other way, in never being wholly alone in the dark, in knowing that if you woke in the small hours and spoke, a voice would answer, a hand was near. The whole house slept in that comfort, wrapped in one another's nearness, each one kept by the one across the sill. Say the three things over again, softly, as you drift among the sleeping doors. The gates are barred, the fires are banked, the watch is set, and now add to them this fourth quiet truth, the truth of these passages. There is a sleeper across every door. Nothing can come to anyone here that does not first pass a keeper, even a sleeping one. The house is guarded at its skin by the barred gate, and on its roof by the walking watch, and here, deep within, at every threshold, by a servant lying down in the way. Ring within ring, all the way to the still centre, and everywhere a keeper, waking or sleeping, between the dark and the sleep of the one beyond. There is a warmth in this old way that we have half forgotten, and it is worth resting in as you drift. We think of a door as a thing that shuts people out. Here a door was a thing a person slept across to keep the one beyond it safe. The servant in the doorway was not a lock of iron, but a lock of flesh and breath, warm, living, near, and the sleeper within knew it, and slept the easier for it, knowing that a faithful body lay between them and the dark passage, and that if the night held anything at all it would meet a keeper before it ever reached the bed. That is a soft way to sleep, wrapped in the nearness of the ones who keep you. It is how a whole household slept every night, folded together, each one holding the next. So let the passages fill in your mind with these quiet sleeping keepers. A shape across this door, a shape within that one, all down the dark, warm corridors of the house, each one breathing slow, each one a small warm guard laid down in the way. Nothing moves, nothing needs to. The house is holding itself safe in its sleep, keeper by keeper, threshold by threshold, all the way in to the still centre and all the way out to the barred gate. And you are somewhere inside all of it, held as they are held, with nothing at all to keep and nothing at all to fear. Let the sleepers lie then, across their doors, breathing slow in the warm dark. You do not need to keep any watch tonight. It is all being kept for you as it was kept for them. Every door has its keeper, every ring has its watch. You may let go entirely and sink and be one more of the sleeping many, held inside all those rings of keeping, and nothing at all is asked of you but to rest. See the whole house, then, as one great sleeping body, breathing slow in the dark. The barred gate is its shut outer door. The warm kitchens are its deep-beating heart, never quite still. The long galleries are its cold bones. The royal lodgings are the quiet chambers at its very core, and all through it, at every joint and threshold, a keeper is laid down, holding the part beyond. It sleeps as one thing, this house, gathered and whole and warm, and when the light comes it will wake as one thing from the bottom up the kitchen first. There is nothing left for you to do inside it now but sleep. You are one more warm sleeper in the great sleeping body of the house, held on every side, watched from above, kept at every door. Let your own breathing slow toward the slow breathing of the house. Let the warmth of all those rings settle down over you like blankets drawn up in the dark. You are as safe tonight as any sleeper who ever lay beneath that great roof, and they slept well, and so may you. And in the very deep of the night, in the darkest and stillest hours, something quietly happens in a sleeping house of this age that has almost been forgotten now, and it is one of the kindest customs of the old world. The people of this time did not sleep as we do, all in one unbroken peace. They slept in two. Let us go into that quiet waking hour in the middle of the night and see how the old world kept even the gap between its sleeps. Stay with me in the deep of the night now, in the stillest hour, for there is an old and gentle thing here that I want to give you. In the world of this palace, and for long ages before and after it, people commonly slept in two sleeps rather than one. They went to bed not long after dark and slept their first sleep, a deep sleep of some hours. And then, in the middle of the night, they woke naturally without alarm into a quiet waking hour. And after that waking hour they lay down again and slept their second sleep until the morning. The first sleep and the second, with a still island of wakefulness set between them in the deep of the dark. This was simply how the night was shaped, for almost everyone, and no one thought it strange, and no one lay fretting to be awake at such an hour, because being awake at such an hour was part of the night, expected and known. And it was a gentle hour, that waking between the sleeps. People used it softly. Some lay quiet and let their minds drift. Some talked low with whoever shared the bed. Some prayed, for it was thought a good still hour for prayer, the house and the world asleep and the soul awake. Some rose to tend the fire or to eat a little. It was not a time of worry. It was a kind of peaceful clearing in the middle of the night, and people passed through it and back into sleep without trouble. If you have ever woken in the small hours and lain there calm and unbothered, half dreaming, warm, in no hurry to do anything at all, then you have touched the old first and second sleep, and you were closer to these sleepers than you knew. And see how the great house had thought even of this. For the palace, remember, provisioned the very night. In the principal chambers there was set out the all-night, the livery of the night, that allowance of bread and ale or wine, with a candle to light and fuel to mend the fire, left ready so that anyone waking in the dark hours would find what they needed and want for nothing. So picture a waker now, in that quiet hour between the sleeps. Let us say it is someone lodged in one of the great chambers, who stirs and wakes and lies a while, and then rises softly in the dark, and there, left ready for exactly this hour, is bread, and a cup of ale or wine, and a candle to kindle at the banked embers, and a fire that mends to warmth at a touch. The house foresaw their waking and provided for it, so that the loneliest hour of the night held bread and light and warmth, all set out beforehand by hands that had gone to their own rest. Say the three things once more, drifting there in the still hour. The gates are barred, the fires are banked, the watch is set. And now there is bread on the board, and a light to kindle, and a fire that wakes to a touch, even here, even now, in the deep middle of the night. The old world did not leave its people alone even in the gap between their sleeps. It set out food and light against the dark hour in advance as an act of care. There are few ideas from the whole of history I find kinder than that the night itself was provisioned, that even 3 in the morning was foreseen and gently kept. Rest in that quiet hour a while with them, for it may be the very hour you're in now wherever you're listening. If you are awake in the deep of your own night, restless, sure that you should be sleeping, let me give you the old world's gift instead. To these sleepers, the waking hour was not a failure of the night. It was part of the night, expected, ordinary, even sweet. They did not lie there scolding themselves for being awake. They lay there calm, or rose and warmed themselves, or prayed or drifted, and then sleep came back as they always knew it would. You may do the same. Being awake now is not a thing gone wrong. It is only the still island between your first sleep and your second, and the far side of it is more sleep, and the whole house of the night is keeping you the while. And picture, once more, how gently the old house held even this. The bread set ready on the board, the cup beside it, the candle waiting by the banked embers, needing only a touch to wake to flame, the fuel laid by to mend the fire. All of it put there in advance, before the household slept, so that the waker in the dark hour would reach out and find warmth and food and light already provided, and no need to wake a soul. The night was not left bare. The night was furnished, like a room, against the hour when someone would surface into it. There is such tenderness in that forethought, such quiet love in providing for a darkness you will not be awake to share. The house thought of its people even in the middle of the night, and left them bread and a light and went to sleep. The waker eats a little, and mends the fire, and lets the warmth come up, and then lies down again into the second sleep, easy, unafraid, held. So there is no need tonight to fear the waking hour if it comes to you. The old world would tell you it is nothing to fear at all. It is only the still turning point of the night, the calm island set between your sleeps, and it has been part of how people rest for far longer than there have been palaces to rest in. Lie easy in it if you find yourself there. Let your mind go where it drifts. The fire is kept. The house is watched. The second sleep is waiting on the far side of this quiet hour, and it will come as surely as the morning and carry you the rest of the way down. And all the while, the house keeps you, exactly as it kept its own. The bread is on the board, the light waits by the embers, the watch walks its slow round. Nothing at all is asked of you but to lie still and let the hour pass, and then to sink again into the deeper sleep beyond it, held and warm and unafraid. And high over all the sleeping and the waking, over the first sleep and the second alike, one old machine keeps turning through the whole of it, measuring out the hours the sleepers do not count. It stands above the inner gate, and it has turned all night, and it is turning now. Let us go and stand beneath the great clock and watch the night turn over toward the morning. Come and stand with me beneath the great clock now in the inner court, and let us watch the night turn. High over the inner gateway of the palace hangs a great astronomical clock, made in the reign of the old king Henry VIII, more than 50 years ago now. It is a wonderful thing, one of the marvels of the house. It does not only tell the hour, its great painted face shows the hour, and the day of the month itself, and the phase of the moon, waxing or waning or full, and even the time of high water down at London Bridge, so that a waterman might read from it when the tide would serve to carry him up or down the river. All of that, worked out in wheels and weights and painted dials, turning slowly over the gate, made by hands that have been dust for lifetimes, and it has been turning all night. While the gates were barred, it turned. While the fires were banked and the household went to its beds, it turned. Through the first sleep and the waking hour and the second sleep it turned, slow and steady and unwatched, its painted sun and moon wheeling on across its face, measuring out the very hours the sleepers have let go of. There is something deeply peaceful in that, a clock keeping the time so that no one else need keep it. All through the night someone or something counts the hours for us, so that we may stop counting them ourselves and sleep. The great clock does that for the whole palace, turning over the gate in the moonlight, holding the night's slow account while 1,000 people lie unconscious of the passing time. Say the three things once more, softly, beneath the turning clock. The gates are barred, the fires are banked, the watch is set, and the clock turns on above them all, carrying the night gently over toward the morning. You do not need to watch it. That is the whole gift of it. Let the clock keep the hours, let the watch keep the doors, let the fires keep the warmth. Everything that counts and keeps and holds the night is being done by someone or something else, patiently, so that you may lay the whole weight of the passing time down and sleep, and let the hours carry you where they will. There is a very old peace in letting a thing keep the time for you. All day we watch the clock ourselves and count the hours and feel them pressing on us. But here, in the deep of the night, the counting is taken clean out of our hands. The great clock does it, high over the gate, turning its painted dials in the dark, and asks nothing of us in return. We may let the hours go entirely, we may lose all track of them, which is the very thing we're trying to do as we fall asleep, and the clock will not mind and will not stop, and will still be turning faithfully when we wake. So give the whole night over to it, drifting there. You do not need to know the hour. You do not need to wonder how long is left till morning. Let the old clock hold all of that for you, turning slow and sure above the sleeping gate, so that you may set down the whole weight of the passing time, and simply rest inside the night, uncounted, unhurried, and kept. And here is the deepest comfort the clock holds, and I will give it to you gently, for it is the kind of thing to fall asleep on. That clock is still there. It hangs over the same gateway to this day, its painted face still bright, its slow wheels still turning, still showing the hour and the moon and the tide, a machine from the reign of a Tudor king still quietly measuring out our own nights, well over 400 years on. The people who first watched it turn are long gone. The court that slept beneath it is long scattered. But the clock turns yet, and that is the great tender secret of this whole night, that so much of it survives, that the walls still stand and the clock still turns and someone somewhere still keeps a fire and bakes the morning bread. We will come to all that survives at the very end. For now, simply rest under the turning clock and let it carry the night for you. Let the great clock turn a while longer for you, up there over the gate in the moonlight, and let me tell you softly what it is doing while you rest. Its painted sun is creeping, slow as anything, toward the place where the morning will be. Its moon is showing its face, waxing or waning, the same moon that stands over your own roof tonight. Its little dials hold the day of the month, the age of the moon, the turning of the tide far down the dark river, and all of it moves by weights and wheels set going by a maker long dead, turning on and on without a hand to help it, keeping the count so faithfully that no one need ever glance up. It asks nothing of the sleepers, it simply keeps their time for them, all night, patient and exact over the sleeping gate. There is no gentler companion for the small hours than a clock that keeps the time so you do not have to. Let it have the hours. Let it carry the whole slow weight of the passing night, minute by minute, while you lay yours down. You have counted enough today. You have watched enough clocks of your own. Here is one made 500 years ago that will keep this night for you, as it kept that one, turning quietly over the gate so that you may stop your own counting entirely, and let the time move on without you, and sink. And as the clock turns the darkest hour past, The very first work of the coming day begins again, down below, where our whole night's warmth began. For the ovens are being fired, and the bread is being drawn, and the palace is starting quietly from the bottom up to become the bright, loud place of the day once more. Let us go down one last time to the bakehouse and see the first bread of the morning. Come down with me one last time toward the warmth below, for the night is old now, and the first work of the morning has begun. It is still dark, and it will be dark a while yet, but the deepest part of the night is past, and in the bakehouse the long vigil is coming round to its reward. The night baker, who has worked through all the dark hours, is drawing the first bread from the ovens. There it comes, on the long wooden peel, loaf after loaf, golden and hot and crusted, the fine white manchet and the good brown household bread together, the first food of the coming day, made ready while the whole house slept. The warm smell of it fills the bakehouse, and moves out along the passages, stronger now, richer, the smell of morning coming. He sets the loaves to cool, and his long night's work stands there in warm ranks before him, and it is good. There is a plain joy in the first bread that is worth resting on, drowsy as you are. Of all the things a house can wake to, warm bread may be the kindest. It is the smell of being cared for. It is the smell of a morning that someone has prepared for you while you slept. And here it is being made exactly so in the last dark hour, loaf after golden loaf for a whole great house of people who will come down to it and never think how it came to be warm and waiting. The baker does not need their thanks. The bread itself is the thing, and the making of it, and the warm smell of it going up through the house like a promise kept. All through the lower house the same quiet waking begins. The banked fires, kept alive all night under their grey ash, are raked open now and blown gently back to flame, waking from their own held warmth without ever having to be started anew, exactly as they were meant to. The great kitchen hearths breathe back into life. The water is fetched, running clean and cold from the cisterns that the conduits filled in the dark. The candle ends and torch stubs of the night are gathered up, to be brought in and counted by 9 of the clock, as the old rule says, and the palace begins, quietly and from the bottom up, to turn itself back from a house of sleep into a house of day. It always begins here, below stairs, in the dark before the dawn, with the keepers who never fully slept. And through the sleeping house above the first faint signs of morning begin to move, so gently that no sleeper wakes. A little more warmth creeping up from the woken kitchen fires, the good smell of new bread reaching further along the passages, here and there the earliest of the servants stirring in the dark, rising before the rest, going quietly to their tasks, the water carried, the ash raked, the first shutters eased back. It is the softest of wakings, the great house coming back to life from the bottom up so slowly and so kindly that those still sleeping only sleep the sweeter for the growing warmth and the smell of the bread, and do not stir at all. None of it asks anything of the sleepers. That's the whole grace of it. They will wake when they wake to a house already warm and already working, as though it had never slept, and never know how gently it was brought back to the day for them. The keepers hand the morning up to the house as softly as you might lay a warmed blanket over a sleeping child, and step back and let them sleep on a little longer in the growing warmth. This is the shape of the whole night, come round to its close. The last work of the night and the first work of the morning are the same work, done by the same few, in the same dark hours, so that the many may wake to a warm and ready house and never know how it came to be so. The fires that were banked at dusk are the fires that wake at dawn. The dough that was set in the deep of the night is the bread that is drawn before the light. The keeping never stopped. It only turned slowly from the shutting of the gate to the baking of the bread, passed from hand to hand through the dark, and now it hands the warm morning back to the sleeping house as gently as it took the evening from it. Let me hold this warm moment for you a while, the turning of the night into the day, for it is the softest changing of the guard there is. All night the keeping has been passed from hand to hand, and now in the last dark hour it comes round to the morning again. The fires that a groom banked in the great hall at dusk are being woken by another hand at dawn. The dough the baker set in the deep of the night is the bread he draws before the light. The water the conduits gathered in the dark is running clean into the morning's pots. The candle ends of the whole long night are being gathered to be counted by 9 of the clock, and fresh light will go out again by rank when the next dusk comes. Nothing was dropped, nothing was lost. The keeping only turned, slow and sure, all the way round the night, from the shutting of the gate to the drawing of the bread. And still the house sleeps on above it all, and does not see this happen, and does not need to. That is the whole point of the keepers, that their work is invisible and the sleepers wake to warmth, as though warmth were simply the way of things. The many will rise soon to lit fires and fresh bread and clean water and an open gate, and most of them will never once think of the few who were awake in the dark to make it so. And the few do not mind. They never minded. They kept the night because it was theirs to keep, and now they hand back the morning warm and ready, as gently as it was given to them. The baker wipes his hands and looks at his cooling loaves and knows his night is nearly done. Soon the house will wake and the gates will be unbarred, and the great clock will strike an hour that people are awake to hear, and the whole loud bright day will begin again. But not quite yet. There is still a little dark left, a last hour of quiet before the waking, and the warmest thing to do with it is to go back once more to the very centre of the house, to the still heart where the whole night has been kept, and to be there for the last of the sleeping. Come with me softly, for the last time tonight, back to the banked fire and the sleeping rooms at the centre of it all. Come with me now, very softly and very slowly back to the still centre of the house, for the last of the night, and let us end where all the keeping was aimed. We go inward one last time. Through the rings we have walked all night, the barred gate behind us, the hall with its banked fire, the long galleries, the guarded doors, the deep hushed lodgings, all the way in to the warm still heart. And here it is, as we left it. The bedchamber, deep within all the rings of the house, the fire banked to a low, safe red glow behind its guard, giving out its gentle warmth into the dark, the great bed still and silent behind its drawn curtains, the sleeper within it unlooked at and at peace, as they have been all night, and on the low truckle bed beside it, the young groom of the privy chamber asleep now himself, the nearest sleeper to the sleeper at the centre of it all. This is the warmest, safest, most watched room in all of England on this night, and we have come back to it for the good night. Let us simply stand here a moment, in the doorway of the warmest room in England, and look in, and be at peace. There is nothing here but warmth and rest. The low red fire, the still curtained bed, the near sleeper breathing slow, the deep hush of a room kept safe through a whole long night, and now come near the end of it. We have walked the whole great house to reach this, gate and hall and gallery and kitchen and guarded door, and it all comes down, in the end, to this one small warm place and the sleep it holds. This is what all the keeping was for, not the grandeur, this. A warm room, a safe sleep, a kept fire, a soul at rest. Every wall of the palace, every gate and watch and banked hearth, every waking keeper in the dark, all of it was only ever aimed at making one small warm place where someone could lie down and be safe. And here it is, and here we are. And around this one still room, ring upon ring, the whole great house holds. Feel them all around you as you drift. Just beyond the door, a groom asleep across the threshold. Beyond him, the grooms across every door of the lodgings. On the queen's side, the maids asleep under the mother of the maids. Up on the cold leads, the yeoman walking his watch under the moon. Below, the porter in his lodge by the barred gate. Keys kept, fire low. And deep below that, in the warm, the baker among his cooling loaves, and the boys asleep on the flags by the kitchen fire, and the undercook by his banked hearths, and the great clock turning slowly over the gate through the last of the dark. Ring within, ring, and everywhere a keeper, and at the centre of it all, the sleeper, and around the sleeper, the whole warm kept house. Let us simply be here a while, in this one warm room with nothing left to do. The fire glows low and red and safe. The room is warm. The near sleeper breathes slow on his low bed. Beyond the curtains, the sleeper at the centre is at peace. And all around, the great house holds its 1,000 sleepers, each one warmed somewhere under the one long roof, each one kept. There is no hurry now. The hardest hours of the night are past. The bread is baking. The clock is turning toward the light. And here at the heart of everything, the fire is banked and the room is still, and the whole warm house is wrapped around this one quiet place, like blankets around a sleeping child. Let yourself grow as heavy and as warm as this room. There is nothing left tonight that needs you. Every gate is barred that needs barring. Every fire is banked that needs banking. Every door has its keeper. Every ring has its watch, and the morning is already rising gently from the ovens below. All of it is held, all of it is kept, and you are held and kept along with it, deep inside all the warm rings of this house, on the safest side of every door there is. At the very beginning of tonight, drifting off, I asked you a question to carry down into sleep. Who stays awake in a house this size so that everyone else can rest? And now, at the end, you know the answer, and it is the whole warm procession of this night. The porter at the gate, the yeoman on the leads, the groom across the door, the baker in the warm, the boy who tends the fire, the woman who lies down last when all her charges are down. They stayed awake in their turns through the dark so that the many could sleep. And the deeper answer, the one to rest on, is that it has always been so, and still is. In every house where a light is left burning and a fire is kept and someone lies down last of all, so that the others may rest. The palace is only the largest, warmest picture of the smallest, kindest human fact. We take turns keeping the night, and because someone keeps it, we are safe to sleep. So let yourself be one of the sleeping many now, held at the centre of all those rings of keeping. You do not have to keep any watch. You do not have to tend any fire or bar any gate. It is all being done as it was done for 1,000 sleepers under that great roof, as it has been done every night since there were people to keep it. The gates are barred, the fires are banked, the watch is set, and you are on the warm side of every door kept among the kept, safe to let go of the whole day and the whole world and simply sleep. The fire is banked, the gates are barred, and the whole great house is kept safe, and the night will keep till morning. Sleep well, friend. If one of tonight's keepers stayed with you, the porter, or the baker, or the yeoman on the moonlit leads, you might tell me in a comment which one, whenever you wake. And if these long quiet nights help you rest, a like or a subscribe helps me leave the next one burning for someone else who needs it. There is no need to do anything now, only rest. Next time, we will take a smaller and a quieter night, a single room and a single fire, and settle in there together. Until then, sleep well and be kept, and I will keep the light on here for you.